The sitting is open. Dear colleagues, this morning we held a ballot to elect a judge to the European Court of Human Rights in respect of the United Kingdom. An absolute majority of the votes was required. I will now announce the results. Total number of members voting, 166. Number of spoiled or blank ballot paper, 1. Number of valid votes, 165. Absolute majority of the votes cast, 83. The votes were cast as follows. Mr. Hugh Mercer, 151. Mrs. Deok Jo-Ri, 4. Mr. Sam Wordsworth, 10. So Mr. Hugh Mercer, having obtained a majority of votes cast, is elected Judge of the European Court of Human Rights for a term of office of 9 years, which shall commence not later than 3 months after his election. Let's applaud him and welcome him. Now, I wish to ask the Assembly to approve changes in the agenda for the afternoon Wednesday, 25th June, and the day of Thursday, 26th of June. It is because of the visit of President Zelensky. In the evening after the signature ceremony, we expect him to be at our Assembly. And on this occasion, I would like to congratulate the Committee of Ministers that has decided just half an hour ago, as far as I know, to authorize the Secretary General to sign this agreement. The debate on draft protocol amending, I'm now announcing the changes. The debate on draft protocol amending the Council of Europe Convention on the Prevention of Terrorism is currently due to take place on Thursday morning. I propose to bring that forward to Wednesday afternoon. The debates on saving the lives of migrants at sea and protecting their human rights and the challenges and needs of public and private actors involved in migration management are due to take place on Thursday afternoon. I propose to bring these debates forward to Thursday morning. The debate on promoting inclusive participation in parliamentary life, gender equality, accessibility, and inclusive policies is due to take place on Thursday morning. I propose to have this debate on Thursday afternoon. Is this agreed to? Yes. So we have an agreement. And before we continue, I want to remind members that they should insert their badge before taking the floor. As you begin, please press the microphone button once only, wait for a couple of seconds, and then start talking. I also remind the Assembly that members who have not submitted an annual declaration of interest are required to start any intervention with an oral declaration of interest under paragraph 20 of the Code of Conduct for members of the Parliamentary Assembly. I also remind members that speaking times are limited to 2 minutes for all of today's debates. The next item on the agenda is questions to our Secretary General, Mr. Alain Berset. We will first hear questions from the speakers on behalf of the political groups and hear a response from Mr. Berset to those questions. Please, will the speakers limit their intervention to 30 seconds? 30 seconds. I remind colleagues that they should ask one single question and not make speeches. So, I will start. Dear Alain, would you like to stay here or to go to the rostrum? Whatever you prefer. Maybe the rostrum is better. Okay. So I will start with Mr. Frank Schwabe, the leader of the Socialists, Greens and Democrats. Mr. Schwabe, you have the floor for 30 seconds.
Two, three. Dear Mr. President, dear Mr. Secretary General, we were informed that there was a letter of 9 countries to whoever, to the public, or I don't know, about the question of migration and how to treat the convention and how to deal with the court. Maybe it's a good opportunity here, because all the ambassadors are here, to say what you think we have to do with the letter. You want to ignore it because it was not addressed to no one, or you think we should answer how we should deal with the letter?
Dear Secretary.
I thank you very much, Mr. Schwabe, for this question, and I can maybe it's the first occasion that I can speak also at the Assembly about this issue. Want to recall how it happened. I was informed. I read in the papers that there was a letter, public letter addressed by 9 countries of the European continent, all members of the EU, all members of the Council of Europe, addressing the question, the issue on migration and the role of the court and about the case law. And to be honest, I mean, it's known now, and I repeat this one more time. Maybe it's the last time I will repeat this, who knows? I never received this letter, neither PACE, neither the CM, neither the court. I mean, for us, it is a non-existing letter, but it was a public letter. And thanks God, we are able to read newspapers, you know, to read the news and to have the information about this. That's the first element. The second element, it doesn't mention the Council of Europe. This letter mentions other institutions, for example, NATO or others, but not the Council of Europe. And the question next is, what does it mean and how can we proceed with this? I mean, I make this clear because it is not a good start for having a political discussion on, well, any issue. It's not a good start for this. I made this point clear before the Committee of Ministers. I made this point clear also in public statements. I want to make this point clear also here. And I take also this occasion to make clear that if the debate is always healthy, politicizing the court is absolutely not. And we are advocating the year long for independent judiciary, to have the difference between, you know, government and judicial power, to know what it means, and exactly the opposite is happening here. I mean, it's not a good start for such a discussion, and I made it clear, and I will continue on this path. Saying this, I mean, it must be possible in the right context, with the, you know, in the right context to address all political issues. You have at PACE also a committee working on migration. It is possible to raise this issue at the CM. It is possible to raise this issue between member states. It must be possible to have all this discussion in appropriate context. And as we understand that this issue will probably remain strong in member states about migration for different reasons, by the way. 9 countries signed the letter. But my impression, reading newspapers one more time, it is that the migration issues and discussion in Italy, it is not exactly the same or to compare with the migration issue in Denmark. And it is not to compare with the migration issue in the Baltic states. And it is not to compare with migration issues in other countries. That means the same word, the same concept address different situations. And we need also to take this complexity in account. Saying this, I think, and also we had some signals that other countries want to also address this issue at the political level. We should start this discussion in an appropriate way, not wanting to change the European Convention on Human Rights. This European Convention on Human Rights is the most important thing that we have with the system of the Convention for having this convergence between rights for all the citizens for our countries. And every time that that we had the additional protocol, it was in addition to develop, to give more support, and I mean, it is what we did until now. Saying this, if we want to address the migration issues, I'm ready to this. I always said there is no taboo at the political level to address all possible debates. Then we need to have the appropriate context to do this. And at the Council of Europe, it is the Committee of Ministers possible to have a discussion between member states, to objectivize the situation, to find facts. What are you speaking on exactly? What does it mean? What can we do with this? And then to see what will happen with this discussion, exactly like you have at PACE, also a committee working on those issues.
Thank you. On behalf of the European People's Party, the leader of the group, Mr. Pablo Hispano.
Gracias. Voy a utilizar el español. Ok.
Pero hace que entiendo el español, ¿no?
Sí, ok.
Lo entiendo. No puedo hablar, pero lo entiendo, por lo menos.
Vale. Lo voy a hacer más despacio, entonces. La corrupción es uno de los grandes enemigos de la democracia. Greco está haciendo un excelente trabajo, pero en ocasiones algunos países se niegan a publicar sus informes o tardan años en hacerlo o no cumplen con las recomendaciones. A mi grupo le gustaría conocer las iniciativas del secretario general para que esto no suceda, y especialmente ante la situación de España, por los gravísimos casos de corrupción que estamos conociendo, el propósito del Gobierno de cambiar el modo de acceder a la judicatura, la imputación del fiscal general del Estado, las acusaciones de ministros a los jueces por lawfare o las amenazas contra la prensa. Dada la degradación del Estado de Derecho que está atravesando España, ¿qué valoración hace ante esta situación de emergencia?
Thank you. Mr. Secretary.
So thank you very much for this question. First of all, I am aware about the recent concerns raised in Spain, including those related to corruption and institutional integrity. And let me also in the context be clear. I mean, corruption is a serious threat to democratic trust, and it is precisely for this reason, and it's precisely why the role of Greco that you mentioned in your question is so crucial. As far as I'm informed, Spain is currently engaged in a compliance review under Greco evaluation. It is the 5th evaluation round for Greco, focusing on central government and law enforcement. And I take also this opportunity to reaffirm one more time that I support and I always supported greater transparency, including automatic publication of Greco reports. I mean, it could be an important step. This is a proposal made several times by the Secretariat, although member states have not yet agreed to change the current rules. That said, I mean, the Greco is not a political body. Its purpose is to foster dialogue. Its purpose is to support reform. And it is not to interfere in national debates or to target specific governments. That's why, well, I trust that Spain, first of all, like all member states, will engage constructively with its recommendation. It is an interest of democracy. It is an interest of public confidence, and we will see what will happen in this situation and condition. But we have the tools. We have the institutions exactly to address those concerns when they are raised, and I'm sure it will be exactly the same situation with Spain.
Thank you. On behalf of the European Conservatives, Patriots and Affiliates, Ahmed Gevorkyan.
Thank you. Mr. Secretary General, after almost half a century of membership in the Council of Europe, Georgia is under harsh criticism and sanctions. Armenia is facing damaged territorial integrity and ethnic cleansings of Armenian people in Karabakh, and Azerbaijan has completely turned into a state that excludes human rights. What further notable achievements can we expect in the region in the coming years under the continued Council of Europe membership? Thank you.
Thank you for this question, and I can feel also in the question that you are raising also some question about the relevance being a member of the Council of Europe. And the first point I want to mention in this situation, it is to be a member of the Council of Europe is to make the commitment to respect the European Convention on Human Rights. It is to recognize the central role of the European Court on Human Rights, and it is to execute all the judgments from the European Court on Human Rights. Only this element, just this element, is really from utmost importance. And that's why we are really strongly committed to make sure that this system, even in critical times, in difficult times, even if we are just seeing, like now, backsliding more or less everywhere about the values, when we are seeing divergent forces in action, our role is to be strong with those institutions to make sure that those elements, those core elements, will continue to remain so important. The next point will be about the whole region, South Caucasus, and probably, as you noted, I'm strongly concerned about the situation and future of the whole region. That's why I visited the 3 countries that you mentioned in your question. I am in close contact with also authorities, with members of the civil society. Visiting the countries always clearly also try to visit to see the opposition parties. I have also meetings here with them. I mean, to understand and to be able to play a role in this highly complex situation. What I want to mention maybe also regarding the situation in the region, it is that we need now to have a step forward about the peace agreement between Armenia and Azerbaijan. I'm trying to support all those efforts to have this peace agreement. I was recently, 2 weeks ago now, in Yerevan with substantial meetings with all counterparts and people that I was able to meet there. More than 2.5 hours meeting with Prime Minister Pashinyan, for example, to really go deep in all those elements and to see what we can do. I had also meetings with President Aliyev exactly on the same elements and seeing also the huge difficulty in the region and after the war. And I noted in the last week, I think, that we had a visit from President Aliyev in Ankara, and the next day a very historic visit from Prime Minister Pashinyan also in Ankara. And I hope, I mean, we are at the side of the regional countries. We are not able to sign at the place of the people who are supposed to do this, but we can support and we can also use our influence to ensure that it will be a positive step in this regard. You mentioned also Georgia. I mean, in Georgia, it is known that it is going in not a good direction. I mean, the collaboration also with the Council of Europe. We try to do our best. I will present myself in Tbilisi in December, you know, to remain in close contact, to develop a path together where it is possible to see a positive development. But as you may know, and as we see, it is quite difficult at the moment. We remain strongly committed to make some steps forward and can also use the Council of Europe and this place here, peace and decisions that we have as platform for dialogues. In this context, I need also to mention that I've heard more and more a concern also about the participation. You can imagine at the Council of Europe. Also in Armenia, the point was raised about the necessity to have also the three countries represented here in Strasbourg, because it is possible to help and to support what's happening then in the region and to try to be at the side of the whole region and the countries to develop positive moves. Maybe what I can say to this, but never forget the main important thing, being a member. It is to commit to the European Convention, to accept the court and to execute the judgment of the court. And I know, mentioning now Azerbaijan, that we have a really huge concern, a very important concern with the execution of the judgments of the court after the discussion that we had and what we heard in the last weeks. And it must really, it was really concern us, all of us, because it is the whole system about the protection of human rights that it is here put in question.
Thank you. On behalf of ALDE, Ian Vogels.
Thank you, President. Secretary General, with the signing of the agreement establishing the Tribunal for the Crime of Aggression against Ukraine expected tomorrow, the Council of Europe is about to take an unprecedented step in its history. Could you outline the expected time frame and key steps to bring the Tribunal into operation, and elaborate on how the compensation mechanism will function, particularly the roles of an interplay between the claims register, the claims committee, and the Tribunal itself? Do you foresee any legal, political, or logistical obstacles in implementing the Tribunal? And what role do you envision for the Parliamentary Assembly? And it came to my attention that the fifth opposition leader has been arrested in Georgia today. Thank you for your reflection. Thank you.
Thank you about the special tribunal, and thank you very much for raising this question and this issue. Well, it didn't start yesterday. I mean, it is a very important role that the Council of Europe and also Euro Assembly played in the past 3 years now to see what can we do at best to ensure accountability for Ukraine in this terrible situation. I mean, in the context of the aggression, the war of aggression of Russia against Ukraine. And it is important to address these elements because we are at the Council of Europe, the organization that really is in charge of all this question about issues about accountability. I mean, we have with the court, with the European Court on Human Rights, we have a court addressing on an everyday basis all possible violations of human rights in the context of the war. We have, with the register of damage, this creation that was made in the summit of Reykjavik by the head of government, a second pillar, very important pillar for accountability. And we now need to develop this as fast as possible, as consequent as possible in a claims commission with also the funding. And we have as a third pillar this tribunal addressing the crime of aggression. I was always asked, why do we need a special tribunal doing this? I mean, you know this point. There is no jurisdiction at the moment competent to address the crime of aggression from Russia against Ukraine, knowing that it was recognized as an aggression in the very first days of the full-scale aggression in the United Nations. And it is not possible just to accept that impunity will prevail. Accountability must prevail, and it's exactly the role that we can have. This organization, expelling Russia, took a path that allowed, that make possible to make those steps a reality. Now about the special tribunal. Well, I know, it was 1 hour ago that the Committee of Ministers took this decision to authorize the signature with Ukraine, between Council of Europe and Ukraine. This step will be done tomorrow with the President Zelensky visiting Strasbourg also for this very important signature. But it didn't start just yesterday. We had more than 2 years' work of the so-called core group, preparing all the elements. We have now texts that are really have been negotiated and prepared by the core group, and it allows us to make the next step. That means the texts are on the table. We need now to prepare, after the signature of the agreement between the Council of Europe and Ukraine, to have to open the negotiation for the enlarged partial agreement. It is the way for member states or non-member states to join this enlarged partial agreement. We need a strong and broad support for accountability. It will be necessary to do this, and I mean it will depend on the possibility that we have to have countries going fast. Joining fast, then we have, for all members that will join, also national procedures. That means in some countries there is necessary to have an agreement or to have support by the parliament, national parliament. In other countries it is not the case. It will depend also on those realities that we have on the field, but on our side we will be able to go as fast and to move as fast as possible. We will sign tomorrow, then we will prepare the next step. And I'm sure that we'll be able to give you much more information by the next session of the Parliamentary Assembly in October. The goal is to go fast, to move fast, and to ensure as fast as possible that it will be that accountability will be given for this context. One big hurdle will be the financing of the whole special tribunal. It will be needed to have resources that are not present at the Council of Europe for doing this, and it will be part of all the discussion and negotiation that we will have in the next few weeks and months. Then, with all countries wanted to join.
Thank you. We have finished the list of speakers on behalf of the political groups. Now we'll give the floor to colleagues in groups of 3. So, dear Alain, if you want, really sorry, Gabriel, yeah, Gabriel Catalan on behalf of the United European Left. We cannot hear you.
Le 1er juin, le Madeleine et son équipage partaient vers la bande de Gaza pour briser le blocus humanitaire et apporter une aide aux Gazaouis. Une action utile, éminemment politique et pacifique. Le 9 juin, les 12 membres de cet équipage, dont la députée européenne Rima Hassan, Greta Thunberg, un médecin et 2 journalistes, étaient enlevés en eau internationale par l'armée israélienne. Après cette arrestation illégale violant le droit international, l'équipage a été maintenu tout aussi illégalement en détention pendant plusieurs jours. En réponse à ces violations, la France et l'UE sont restées silencieuses. Emmanuel Macron a été incapable de condamner l'arrestation et les mauvais traitements subis par 6 de ses ressortissants. Notre Assemblée a déjà appelé à un accès humanitaire sans entrave à Gaza et à assurer la fourniture de biens essentiels à tous les Palestiniens. Monsieur le secrétaire général, condamnez-vous ces actes illégaux commis par Israël piétinant le droit international et le silence de la France, membre du Conseil de l'Europe? Merci.
Je vous remercie pour cette question. La première chose qui nous inquiète, la première chose qui nous vient à l'esprit lorsque nous pensons à la région et nous pensons à la situation à Gaza, eh bien, c'est d'abord la situation dans la bande de Gaza. C'est les milliers de morts, c'est les souffrances pour les civils, et c'est ce contexte absolument indicible auquel on a peine à croire, qui s'est développé, en particulier bien sûr depuis le 7 octobre, des attaques horribles du Hamas contre des civils qui, pour bonne partie, faisaient la fête. Et qu'est-ce qu'il y a de plus beau que de faire la fête quand on est jeune et qu'on a envie de vivre? Et ensuite avec la réaction qui a été extrêmement brutale et avec une souffrance de part et d'autre, les otages, les enfants tués, une destruction. On a de la peine à comprendre comment quelque chose comme ça peut se produire aujourd'hui. Et moi, c'est ce qui me vient d'abord à l'esprit en pensant à la région. Je vous dis franchement, ce n'est pas au bateau, ce n'est pas à tous les efforts des uns et des autres, et ils sont nombreux à essayer d'attirer l'attention sur cette situation et de faire quelque chose. Et c'est ça qui me vient à l'esprit en premier, avec tout d'abord, évidemment, régulièrement, de notre part aussi des prises de position qui ont été faites, et vous aurez remarqué que j'ai publié une prise de position, je crois, qui était très claire, il y a quelques jours maintenant, précisément au moment où la plupart des regards se détournaient de Gaza pour regarder vers l'Iran. C'est à ce moment-là que j'ai décidé de parler, de dire quelque chose, de faire part de notre avis, de faire part de notre immense préoccupation devant l'absence de perspective, devant les escalades constantes, devant l'absence de processus politiques et de perspectives d'un processus politique qui puisse être productif, à un moment où les regards se détournaient. Ça a été l'occasion d'ailleurs d'aborder aussi la question, bien sûr, avec nos États membres, et de l'aborder en dehors. Vous pouvez imaginer que cette question a été également dans tous les échanges et les discussions que j'ai pu avoir récemment. C'est quelque chose qui nous laisse un peu sans voix, enfin même si j'arrive encore à parler évidemment, mais un peu sans voix parce qu'on ne voit pas quelles sont les perspectives sur lesquelles nous pouvons aujourd'hui avoir un impact fort. Nous pouvons parler, nous pouvons dénoncer, nous pouvons nous engager pour le respect du droit international, nous pouvons nous engager pour le respect des droits des civils, pour le droit humanitaire. Et il est très important que nous le fassions parce que c'est exactement ce que nous faisons aussi en Ukraine depuis des années maintenant. Et il faut être très attentif à ne jamais avoir de double standard parce que les doubles standards, en fait, détruisent notre propre crédibilité. Et croyez-moi, je suis très attaché à cette logique et cette approche. Et c'est ce qui nous porte parce que les valeurs que nous défendons dépassent le continent géographique. Les valeurs sont plus fortes que le continent géographique. Les valeurs ne se laissent pas limiter par des frontières. Les valeurs telles que nous les concevons, la démocratie, l'état de droit, la défense des droits humains sont universelles. Et nous devons nous battre pour qu'elles le soient. Elles ne le sont pas automatiquement. Mais nous devons nous battre pour cette universalité. C'est la raison pour laquelle nous devons nous engager quand cela concerne, y compris des régions qui sont en dehors de notre sphère directe d'impact et d'influence. Voilà ce que je peux vous dire en premier. Je dois vous dire franchement sur l'arrestation, évidemment, moi je suis aussi très touché par toutes celles et ceux qui, de part et d'autre, essayent de s'engager pour plus d'humanité, pour plus d'amour, pour du respect, pour la conscience de ce que c'est que d'avoir ce privilège immense de faire partie du genre humain. Nous ne sommes pas des êtres isolés qui, chacun dans leur coin, peuvent se battre les uns contre les autres. Nous avons un destin commun. Et c'est quelque chose qui, aujourd'hui, doit être réaffirmé avec force dans les zones de conflit. Quand vous voyez ces situations horribles où des jeunes hommes se battent et s'entretuent, des situations horribles dans lesquelles des personnes sont simplement tuées parce qu'elles font la fête, des situations horribles dans lesquelles des enfants voient leur vie s'arrêter, confrontés à la mort, simplement parce qu'ils se trouvent à cet endroit à ce moment-là, ça c'est inacceptable. Ça n'est pas conforme à nos valeurs et c'est contre cela que nous devons nous battre. Pour votre question précise, parce que je ne vais pas l'éluder, vous me demandez si je vais condamner un État membre pour n'avoir pas agi ou pas parlé. Vous me demandez s'il aurait fallu dire autre chose à ce moment-là. La politique des États membres, naturellement, elle fait partie aussi de leurs prérogatives. Notre rôle à nous, c'est de toujours rappeler le cœur des valeurs. C'est ça que nous devons faire. Et pour le reste, je ne suis pas en mesure de juger de la situation exacte. naturellement, méfie toujours de prendre des positions sur des sujets qui, dans le fond, pourraient faire suite, qui pourraient donner à des poursuites judiciaires et à des décisions de tribunaux. Je suis particulièrement attentif pour le Conseil de l'Europe, parce qu'à chaque fois que, comme secrétaire général, je parlerai sur une situation politique qui pourrait finir devant la Cour, naturellement, je limite, je diminue l'influence et l'intervention, de possibilité d'intervention de la Cour. Donc je ne vais pas aller dans ce sens-là, mais je voulais surtout passer un message pour les souffrances des civils, pour l'importance du droit humanitaire, pour l'importance du droit international, et pour redire encore une fois que nous devons nous battre pour nos valeurs, parce que si nous ne le faisons pas, eh bien d'autres font le contraire. N'oublions jamais cela, et c'est pour ça que nos institutions existent depuis 75 ans. C'est pour ça qu'elles ont été fondées sur les ruines de la Deuxième Guerre mondiale, après des souffrances énormes sur le continent européen. Et c'est pour des moments comme maintenant que ces institutions elles ont été fondées. Elles n'ont pas été fondées pour les périodes de beau temps quand tout va bien. Elles ont été fondées pour avoir un phare, une direction, une orientation quand les choses vont mal. Et c'est là que nous devons nous rappeler toujours de celles et ceux qui nous ont précédés et revenir aux fondamentaux.
I will go now. I will open now the list of colleagues who will address questions in groups of 3, starting by Hripsime Grigorian.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm here, Secretary General. Thank you. And thank you for sharing your views and impressions on the ongoing developments in the South Caucasus, but also Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Armenian-Turkey normalization in particular. You mentioned your recent visit to Armenia, and I would very much appreciate your assessment of the democratic developments in Armenia, as well as the overall level of cooperation between Armenia and the Council of Europe. Thank you.
Next is Hainalka Juhaz, if I
Honorable
pronounce it
Secretary
well.
General, in the last PACE session you mentioned that persons belonging to national minorities should be or must included in the new democratic pact. We absolutely share your point of view because it's mean a protection of human rights and also a precondition of peace and security. What do you think, what is your point of view that, is there any chance to be included in the document? Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, and Aurora Floridia is next.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Council of Europe is the only regional human rights system without the recognition of the right to live in a healthy environment. In April 2024, PACE adopted its most recent resolution on this topic, which strongly advocates for a legally binding instrument. What actions are you planning to take to ensure that during the budgetary negotiations, the Committee of Ministers create a new steering committee on environment, which will be in charge of ensuring the implementation of the strategy adopted in May in Luxembourg, but also of drafting a legally binding instrument? Thank you.
Thank you, Aurora. Secretary General, do you wish to respond?
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. Maybe to start with the question about Armenia, thank you very much. I mean, the visit in Armenia was supposed to be held in March and was postponed to take place in June. And I think, you know, afterwards it was not a bad thing, because in the meantime we have 3 more months to see how it is developing also for the peace agreement, how it is developing for the situation in the whole region, and it was probably a much more timely moment to go last 2 weeks. I mean, the South Caucasus is a region fully integrated in the European family, you know. It is not only the case geographically, it is also the case for a lot of other reasons, historically, and also for the values, even if, as we see, we have a huge diversity on the continent, and it also integrates sometimes difficulties that we can have. I mean, it is not surprising in this backsliding world everywhere. It's backsliding everywhere, also in the South Caucasus, I would say in general, but also in other countries. But I mean, it is just an encouragement for us to work more together. My personal assessment now, because you will find a lot of specialists in the Council of Europe able to address this issue with much more competencies and skills that I am able to do. But my impression, it is that we feel since years a very strong European aspiration for coming from Armenia. This is a very important element to underline. And what is our role in this context? The role of the Council of Europe is to work with the countries willing to do this, to do some developments. That's why we have a very important office of the Council of Europe in Yerevan. I met the office as I went there. I think we have more or less 50 persons, employees of the Council of Europe working there and doing a very strong job to make possible to develop reforms, to develop projects, and to make possible to have this stronger convergence about the values and implementation of the values. That's really important. My impression is very positive. I'm not naive. I know that in all countries, in all member states, you will always find problems to solve, issues to raise. That's normal. But the general movement is important. And my impression is that this general movement is really good, going in the right direction. And it will be important because next year you will have a very important election. And I know that it is, like always in elections, quite lively at the moment in the situation. But maybe this is my positive assessment about the evolution of Armenia. Second element, it was about minorities and integration in the Democratic Pact. Thank you very much. We are working really hard now for this Democratic Pact. And it is clear that what is making the DNA of the Council of Europe, and what is the DNA of the Council of Europe? I spoke before about the European Convention on Human Rights. But we have more than 200 conventions, showing exactly what we want to achieve, and respect and strong support for minorities. It is really strongly enshrined in all the system that we have at the Council of Europe, and obviously it must be part of the whole discussion that we have in the new Democratic Pact. Mentioning this, I can just mention what I see as possible ways to ensure this issue is duly reflected in the new Democratic Pact. Firstly, to reaffirm our standards. Referring to the existing elements that we have, for example, the Framework Convention for the Protection of National Minorities, I was just mentioning before, and also, because it's really important, the European Charter of Regional and Minority Languages. It is part also of this. The second element is to promote democratic participation and also inclusive democracy. It cannot exist without a strong integration of national minorities in political and public life. And the third element, support our monitoring mechanisms. We have some bodies, advisory committee on the Framework Convention, playing a vital role in these issues. And I think it is the element I can just mention for you in this element. About health. I was thinking because, it is a really famous decision of the court last year. When I hear environment, I was thinking, okay, I will be confronted with this decision of the court last year condemning Switzerland about environment and health issues. It is not the case, but it is an important element in all cases. We will, because your question was clear, it was, sorry, we are here. Your question was clear. It is what are we preparing now after the last decision to make sure that this element will be also addressed. A steering committee on the environment is proposed. That's the main element I can announce to you in the intergovernmental structure for 26 and 27. It means that logically we will integrate this in all the programs, and we will also have to ensure that it will be integrated in all the programs. It is also in the budget. It was also your question. That means we are working on this, but we have also other issues on environment. And I thank you to mentioning this because, from Reykjavik, we can see the very strong support from Ukraine. It was the creation of a register, the second pillar I mentioned before, and we are continuing working on this. Second element mentioned in Reykjavik very strongly have been the 10 principles for democracy. And we are trying to realize this now through the new Democratic Pact. And the third really important element, it was about environment. I don't want to describe all the elements now, but we need also to make the steps now to implement also those the decisions from Reykjavik and with the follow-up that we had in the last month also.
Thank you. Naomi Cassia is next.
Thank you, Secretary General. I've been following your recent commitments where it seems that you have been actively engaging with young people across the continent and beyond. This is very promising to see, not only to ensure the relevancy of the Council of Europe, but also to promote youth empowerment, which is also obviously a cornerstone of our Maltese presidency. So my question is, what has been your key takeaway from these engagements? What are young people hopeful about the Council of Europe and its role in safeguarding human rights? And how do we give them back hope where hope has been lost? Thank you.
Thank you. Petra Bayer is next.
Thank you very much. Mr. Secretary General, the Council of Europe has a lot of institutions and instruments like the Parliamentary Assembly, the Court, the Committee of Ministers, the Commission of Human Rights, the Congress of Regions, many monitoring bodies and special advisory bodies. What can you, as the Secretary General of the whole organization, do to have more coherent, more cooperation and more synergies among these bodies, who all share the same values?
Thank you. Evgenia Kravchuk is next.
Thank you, President. Secretary General, well, first of all, congratulations on the next step that committee ministers took, and we're waiting for tomorrow's historical decision. And my question is, when do you foresee that special tribunal for the crime of aggression will be operational? And what is your plan to address countries to join the enlarged partial agreement, and not just from the Council of Europe member states, but beyond? What is the plan for that? Thank you so much.
Thank you. Dear Secretary General.
So thank you very much for all the questions. I will start with the question on the youth, and thank you very much for raising this question, because it's really important. I mean, why are we doing all this? If we think a bit, you know, not just for the next publication on social media or the next thing that we are expecting. Why are we doing all this? And what did our predecessor be for us? It was always for the next generations. That means it is exactly for the youngest generation that we are doing all this now. We should never forget this, and it is important to recall this reality in a world where we can have the impression that the long term is always and more going forgotten. 2040, it is in 15 years. 15 years and 40. In 15 years, it is nothing in the world of today, and we must be best prepared for this. So to the question, first of all, I mean, youth empowerment, as you mentioned, is really important. I mean, we have, I would mention maybe 3 elements. I will be not exhaustive, but I will mention these 2 elements. The first element, and I was always very impressed by what we are doing here, it is about the youth center that we have in Strasbourg and in Budapest. And I had the privilege to visit both. Budapest in November and Strasbourg. Well, I was in Strasbourg before visiting the youth center, but in the position now, it was last week. And it's so interesting to see what it is possible to offer, what it is possible to develop if we bring some few structure, you know. So important. That's an element we should well work on much more, because it is exactly like with those kind of initiatives that we are able to bring more young people in public debates, in engagement. Because the most important thing, and it is always my message to the young generation, the only thing that matters at the end, it is to engage. If you engage in social life, if you engage, you know, in a music group in your village, if you engage in a society for sports, it is engagement. And if you start to do this, then the next step is quite logical. It's also to think about organization of the society, and it is to engage also for communities and for society. It is what we can expect from the younger generation also to do this step, and the youth center are going exactly in this direction. Second element I want to mention to you, it is the visit I made last week to the youth center and DG2. And my impression, you know, it is that we can do much more in the link between the youth center and the work we are doing in the Council of Europe, and the contacts with not only member states, but all cities, villages, communities. And we have the body able to do this. It's called the Congress. We have the Congress. I mean, I wanted to have this discussion also with the Congress before to have discussion with you, but it was clear for me that it is possible to engage more. And we need to support this. in our other capacities, as PACE member, member of the Secretariat, or in the CM, because it is the best possibility that we have to address young people. It is not through national, I think it's possible, but it's much more difficult through national regulation or through national initiative. It is much easier to do this through, activities in communities, cities, and with local and regional authorities. And the first element I want to mention is, before you, it was, last Friday, 5 days ago, we had exactly in this room what is called a hackathon. We organized a hackathon, to tackle and to do something against disinformation, misinformation, for quality of the information. And we had 11 teams, young people, more or less all aged between 18 and 30, I would say, with some few outliers, but 18 and 30, working here hardly entire day to propose some solutions, And last Friday, in this room at 9 p.m., we had people working in this hemicycle with the contest, and then with a decision, and then with a party. Well, it's part of it, And we had those people engaging here for our values and thinking also to technical solutions. What can we bring to make sure that the conditions that we need to have strong democracies, that means also quality of information, diversity of information, that they will remain strong in the future in this world dominated or where social media and artificial intelligence and all those elements can also play negative roles. And it was just a further element I wanted to mention to you in this context. I'm a bit long in the answer, Mr. President. I'm sorry for this. I will try to go faster with the second answer to Petra Bayer about the coherence. It's a very strong and good question, and not so easy to answer, because I think the Council of Europe, founded 75 years ago, has a very long history of sedimentation. We answer different, issues and concerns through the time, and to conserve and to strengthen this coherence with the time is always an issue. We must engage for this. And my impression is that all bodies and institutions are trying to do their best, but maybe we could have a higher expectation for collaboration and communication between us, and maybe also to better share who is doing what at best. It is not the same role and the same thing that you can do as a member of PACE and with a parliamentary assembly that can make, for example, the Congress. I don't want to compare both, but are different roles. And mentioning before the importance of the youth, I think both can do things, but not the same things. And we need to work on this, to work more on this. We have also some institutions where it is much clearer. The difference between the CM and the court, it is clear, The difference between the court and PACE, it is clear also. But we are also institutions where we need to have more coherence. The values are the same. The direction that we want to have are the same, and we need to do this together and to reinforce this collaboration where it is possible. It is not, a miracle solution that I can offer you, but I thank you for raising this issue, and I can just tell you that I'm really, really interested to continue this discussion, also with other bodies and institutions, because it is important if we want to have the impact that this organization deserves to have. About the last question, thank you very much for the congratulations. I will just pass these congratulations to the ambassadors, because they decided, the CM decided to make this step and to authorize me to sign the agreement. What can we foresee? I answered a bit earlier on this issue. We can go as fast as we can. On our side, we are ready. We have the text. We need now to have countries on board. We will need, the next step is a signature. It's not done already. It will be tomorrow night. And I think it will happen exactly like it is organized. But then we must go fast and prepare the enlarged partial agreement and negotiation, and to have countries joining. with all, you know, this national specific situation that we have. For some countries, there is needed to have a support from the parliament. In other countries, it is not the case. We will have a huge diversity of situation, and we will do the best to go fast in this situation. That's the first element. Second element, concerning the countries joining, we had a strong signal with the participants to the core group. That's a very strong signal. Participants to the core group have been members of the Council of Europe and non-members joining. It is important to have enough, not only countries with the number, but with the necessary weight to make this special tribunal really effective, knowing that we will have this big hurdle about the financing. It will be part of the whole discussions, but you know, where this is a political will, there is a path, there is a way. And it's exactly what we need to do, and you can have my engagement that we will do our best to go with the highest possible quality as fast as possible to ensure this third pillar on accountability is so necessary in this world where otherwise we would have the impression that impunity could prevail. We don't want this, and exactly for this we need to do this step as clearly and as strongly as possible.
Dear colleagues, to this day, the Q&A procedure lasted for 30 minutes, and I want to thank our Secretary General, Mr. Alain Berset, that he had agreed to have it for 45 minutes. It was actually 50 minutes. Dear Alain, thank you for being with us, and we are going now to the next item of business this afternoon, continuing this morning's joint debate on two reports from the Committee on Legal Affairs and Human Rights and the Committee on Political Affairs and Democracy. The first is titled Legal and Human Rights Aspects of the Russian Federation's Aggression Against Ukraine, document 16193, presented by Mr. Eric Niels Cross on behalf of the Committee on Legal Affairs and Human Rights. The second is titled Support for Political Negotiations to Enforce Exchange and Release of Prisoners of War, document 16197, presented by Mrs. Elizaveta Iasko on behalf of the Committee on Political Affairs and Democracy. The second report also has an opinion from the Committee on Legal Affairs and Human Rights presented by Rian Vogels. We will now continue hearing from registered speakers. As far as I remember, we have the speaker on behalf of the European People's Party, Belén Hoyo. Belén, are you here?
Gracias, presidente. Compañeros, lo que Rusia está haciendo en Ucrania, además de una invasión a un Estado soberano, es también un ataque directo contra los pilares de esta organización, la defensa de los derechos humanos, de la democracia o del Estado de Derecho. Desde 2022 hemos sido testigos de una escalada brutal de crímenes contra la población civil ucraniana. Rusia ha atacado hospitales, viviendas y escuelas, ha usado el terror como arma política y utilizado la violencia sistemáticamente. Sin duda, ha traspasado todas las líneas rojas. Respecto a los prisioneros de guerra, como ha dicho esta mañana la señora Iasko, los convenios de Ginebra establecen obligaciones claras. Los prisioneros de guerra deben ser tratados con dignidad, protegidos contra la tortura, la violencia, la intimidación y los actos de humillación. Sin embargo, informes de Naciones Unidas y de Amnistía Internacional, así como testimonios directos de prisioneros liberados, algunos escuchados en esta Cámara, confirman una realidad inaceptable. Los soldados ucranianos capturados están siendo sometidos a torturas, vejaciones y hasta ejecuciones extrajudiciales. Estos hechos constituyen violaciones flagrantes del derecho internacional humanitario. Son crímenes de guerra, son actos que vulneran la dignidad humana. Y tengamos claro algo, Rusia no está sola. Países como Irán, Corea del Norte o Cuba están apoyándole, actúan de manera coordinada. Compañeros, tal y como está la situación geopolítica actual, mañana puede ser cualquiera de nuestros países los que se encuentren en la misma situación que Ucrania. Por ello, no debemos estar en silencio. Sigamos trabajando en equipo y en bloque. Gracias por estos informes, gracias por el resto de informes que se están aprobando estos años y estos meses, especialmente los de mi compañero Emanuel Zingeris, que desenmascaran a Putin y su estrategia. Muchas gracias.
No, Piero? No? Then the next speaker is Ms. Petra Bayer.
The illegal war of aggression of the Russian Federation in Ukraine will maybe be the best documented ever that we have. I have been the possibility to be during the Easter weekend in Kiev, Kharkiv, and Bucha. And in Kharkiv, I visited, among others, a drone cemetery where a prosecutor is working on the production of evidence. What missile has done what damage, where and when, what was the exact trajectory, what military unit was in charge at the origin of the trajectory, and how did the chain of command look like at this space in this time. So the prosecutor produced a lot of evidence, and I asked him whether he uses the register of damages, and he says, yes, of course I do. And in Bucha, where there was a lot of sexual violence, torture, assassination, I asked, did you use the register of damages? And they said, yes, of course we do. So I think that's really very important to see that it's really a good sign in these dark times that we will have the chance to hold all these responsible who are perpetrators and who have to be held accountable. And at the end of the day, it will be about justice and not about revenge. Our work here at the Council in Europe indeed has an impact on upholding the international humanitarian law, and with this also a rule of law, respect of human rights. And it's not just the register and not just the tribunal. I also want to mention the ongoing jurisdiction of the European Court, both on interstate applications and on individual applications of Ukrainians. I want to mention the numerous resolutions of our PACE concerning the war of aggression, and I also want to quote, tackle the Venice Commission that gives legal guidance on war-related accountability mechanisms. So it's really important that we all together work for justice after this war. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and our next speaker is Ms. Regina Bastos of Portugal.
Thank you, Chairman, colleagues. I wish to thank the rapporteurs for their work on the reports of the joint debate. The Russian Federation aggression against Ukraine is a flagrant violation of the United Nations Charter and the Geneva Conventions. Thousands of atrocities have been committed with impunity. Torture, sexual violence, summary executions, indiscriminate shelling of civilians, and illegal deportation of children. More than 74,000 people remain missing. Over 19,500 children have been unlawfully transferred. These are crimes. These are crimes against humanity. The situation of prisoners of war is equally alarming. Less than 5,000 Ukrainians have been returned in several exchanges, but thousands remain in Russian facilities, often in violation of international humanitarian law. A vast majority of released prisoners report torture or other abuses. This Assembly has called for concrete action. A permanent all-for-all exchange mechanism coordinated by the International Committee of the Red Cross, prioritizing the wounded and the sick. A special tribunal for the crime of aggression, and a fair and credible reparation system using the $300 billion in frozen Russian state assets. Peace cannot come at the expense of justice. Respect for international law and for human dignity is not negotiable. It is the foundation of any credible and lasting peace in Europe. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I now call Madame Katalin Soba of Hungary.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Chers collègues, pour nous, Hongrois, la question la plus urgente est liée à la guerre russo-ukrainienne est la situation de la communauté hongroise de Transcarpathie, forte de 150 000 âmes vivant dans l'ouest de l'Ukraine. C'est avec tristesse que nous avons constaté les atteintes aux droits dont nos compatriotes, en tant que minorité nationale autochtone, ont été victimes ces dernières années. En janvier 2024, la Hongrie a formulé en 11 points les attentes claires de la partie hongroise concernant les mesures restrictives affectant la communauté hongroise d'Ukraine. La partie ukrainienne n'est engagée dans une déclaration à poursuivre les processus de négociation en 11 points dans le cadre de la conférence intergouvernementale marquant l'ouverture des négociations d'adhésion. Mais aucun des domaines n'a pu être clos. Sur les 3 points clés concernant la restauration des droits dont bénéficie depuis des décennies la communauté hongroise d'Ukraine, la position hongroise et ukrainienne ne se sont pas encore rapprochées. 1. Rétablissement du réseau d'institutions d'enseignement en langue nationale. 2. Restriction de l'autonomie culturelle nationale. 3. Restriction du droit de représentation politique. Dans son document cadre de négociation, Kiev s'est engagé à adopter un plan d'action pour la protection des droits des minorités nationales d'ici à 2027. Le 2 juin 2025, l'Ukraine a transmis ce plan à la Commission, mais nous estimons cependant qu'il ne contient pas les garanties constitutionnelles à l'égal nécessaires pour restaurer les droits retirés à la communauté hongroise. Une grande partie vise plutôt à renforcer la langue d'État ukrainien. Du côté hongrois, nous attendons de la partie ukrainienne qu'elle reste fermement engagée en faveur de la conclusion appropriée des négociations bilatérales en cours portant sur les 11 points. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Mr. Damien Cottier of Switzerland.
Merci, Monsieur le Président de séance. Nous vivons une semaine importante. Notre Assemblée avait été la première organisation internationale qui a plaidé pour la création d'un tribunal spécial pour le crime d'agression il y a 3 ans, plus de 3 ans déjà. Nous le savons, les crimes de guerre, les crimes contre l'humanité qui, hélas, se commettent sur le territoire ukrainien suite à l'agression par la Fédération de Russie, ces crimes-là peuvent être jugés car ils sont de compétence de la Cour pénale internationale. Et il faut que ce travail soit mené, il est mené, il faudra évidemment qu'il se poursuive. Mais le crime d'agression échappait à cette possibilité, à cette juridiction, et il fallait agir parce que cela avait été rappelé à l'époque, selon la description même du jugement de Nuremberg, le crime d'agression est la mère de tous les crimes, puisque c'est de là que découlent tous les crimes qui sont possibles sur le terrain. Et donc il aurait été totalement inacceptable sur le plan des principes que ce crime d'agression ne soit pas puni, raison pour laquelle il fallait lancer l'idée de ce tribunal spécial. J'avais eu l'honneur d'être le premier rapporteur sur ce sujet, suite au rapport qui avait été développé par M. Pochet devant cette Assemblée, immédiatement après l'agression plénière de 2022. Nous avons eu 3 rapports, j'avais eu l'honneur d'être le premier rapporteur, ensuite M. Stier, et aujourd'hui M. Kroes sur ce sujet. C'est très important car nous arrivons à bout touchant. Il y aura tout à l'heure, le comité des ministres a accepté que le secrétaire général signe un accord avec le président ukrainien. Il y aura cette signature demain et nous pourrons entrer dans la phase de mise en place de ce tribunal. Mais pour cela, il faudra encore que les États membres, le plus grand nombre possible d'États, les États membres du Conseil de l'Europe, mais aussi d'autres États, adhèrent à ce système. Et pour cela, il faudra que le secrétaire général prenne son bâton de pèlerin et fasse un travail de conviction. Il faut aussi que nous le fassions comme parlementaires pour que nos États adhèrent rapidement à ce système pour que ce tribunal puisse être mis en place rapidement. J'aimerais remercier le rapporteur et les rapporteurs d'aujourd'hui pour le travail, toutes celles et ceux qui ont travaillé d'arrache-pied pour la mise en place de ce tribunal. C'est un moment historique et je vous remercie, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Mr. Serhiy Sobilov of Ukraine.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to thank, first of all, our rapporteurs. They make excellent work, and I think it's only the beginning. I want to stress that all citizens of Ukraine, Hungarians, Romanian, Moldovan, all of them are now struggling against Russian aggression. It's the main in this. And when hundreds and hundreds of Hungarians are now on the front line, struggling against Russian aggression, it's for our freedom. So I think it's very important to understand that we do not need only reaction through some documents of our Parliamentary Assembly. We need a reaction to implement these documents. And I think that the decision to proclaim and to form the special tribunal of war of aggression and crimes of aggression of Russian Federation against Ukraine, it's the good example when we can produce a special decisions. These special decisions that can't do any other organization, no United Nations, no other organizations, because it's very important that we are those organizations that started this process. And I think it's very important to understand that such process can be involved only through our decisions, as well as we involve it in our decisions using our huge mechanism of human rights court. Now, maybe in a month or in a two, we will have another strong mechanism that we will use as the special tribunal of crime of aggression against Ukraine. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Our next speaker is Mr. Sigurður Helgi Parmesan of Iceland.
Thank you, Mr. President, dear colleagues. In our work here, we often speak of principles, of justice, of law, of human rights, but today I want to speak of something just as vital, hope. Because this week, in the establishment of the Special Tribunal for the Crime of Aggression, I have felt more than just duty. I have felt conviction that what we do here matters. This tribunal is not just a legal mechanism, it is a message, clear, unshakable, and long overdue, that no one is above the law, not even the most powerful. For the first time in modern history, a war of aggression launched against a sovereign European state will be addressed by a tribunal built for that very crime, built not in abstract theory, but through the steady principled work of this assembly and the tireless determination of those who believe that international law is not a dream, but a duty. As a politician, this gives me hope, not only because we are standing up for Ukraine, but because we're showing the world that law can answer violence and that justice can outlast fear. This tribunal will not come close to undoing the suffering, but it can begin to restore something just as precious, the idea that truth matters, that accountability is possible, and that Europe still knows the difference between tyranny and law. So let us walk forward, not just with resolve, but with belief, because in this tribunal and in our common work, we see proof that what we do here in Strasbourg can echo far beyond these walls, into the lives of those who need justice the most. To the rapporteurs, I thank you wholeheartedly. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Monsieur Christophe Lacroix of Belgium.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Monsieur le Président, mes chers collègues, la résolution du collègue Cross est d'une importance capitale, celle des autres partenaires également. Mais elle documente avec rigueur et clarté ce que nous savons désormais tous. La guerre d'agression que mène la Fédération de Russie à l'Ukraine s'accompagne d'innombrables crimes. Torture des prisonniers de guerre, déportation des enfants, destruction méthodique des infrastructures civiles. Il ne s'agit pas là de dommages collatéraux, entendons-nous bien. Ce sont les actes délibérés et consciencieusement calculés d'un autocrate sans limite. Et on pourra certainement faire le lien demain à Gaza où des choses similaires se passent également à l'occasion du débat d'urgence. Mais si je prends aujourd'hui la parole, c'est non seulement en tant que parlementaire, mais aussi en tant qu'Européen attaché viscéralement à la paix. Mais la paix ne peut pas exister sans justice. Et c'est justement ce que cette résolution offre. Elle permet de rendre justice aux victimes, de les reconnaître, de les écouter. Et cela doit passer par la création d'un tribunal consacré aux crimes d'agression. Je soutiens donc sans aucune ambiguïté cette proposition, qui est bien sûr symbolique par le message qu'elle porte, mais ce tribunal serait avant tout un instrument concret de lutte contre l'impunité des dirigeants criminels. Et il est d'autant plus crucial aujourd'hui, au moment où notre allié américain nous tourne le dos et tente de faire légitimer des annexions obtenues par la force, de porter ensemble une voix ferme, unifiée et solide. Et je me permettrai, Monsieur le Président, mes chers collègues, de faire également allusion au débat que nous avons eu ce matin sur la Cour européenne des droits de l'homme. On voit à quel point le multilatéralisme et les institutions judiciaires qui entourent ce multilatéralisme sont précieuses pour faire respecter partout les droits des plus faibles, des plus précarisés, les droits des femmes et des hommes qui sont victimes notamment de violences liées à la guerre ou à l'occupation.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Ms. Bisera Konstanovska of North Macedonia.
Thank you. Since 2022, according to the UN, at least 12,900 civils have been killed. 14,000 people have ended in captivity. More than 80,000 Ukrainian soldiers have died and 400,000 soldiers seriously wounded. The Russian aggression on Ukraine has caused mass moving out, destroyment of the infrastructure, and deep trauma for the civilians who now, unfortunately, perfectly well can determine which siren signals mean what. Bombing, warning, or any other atrocity. Thousands of civilians are feared to have ended up in a network of around 180 prisons in the occupied territories and even in Siberia. 16,000 missing persons have yet been identified whose tracks are lost and not likely to be found. Numerous civilians are taken as hostages, even after the international community warned the Russian aggressors against this. Torture, sexual exploitation, and executions are an everyday occurrence in these prisons, which just adds up to the level of the humanitarian crisis that is unraveling. The war in Ukraine has taken a devastating toll on children, disrupting their lives at critical stages in their development. Children's access to education and healthcare has been severely affected. The ongoing intensity of the war means that some 3.7 million people are still internally displaced and 6.86 million are living outside the country. More than 2,520 children have been killed or injured since February 2022. The true number is likely far higher. 40% of preschool-age children are missing out on early education, impacting brain development and future learning capacity. Half of school-age refugee children from Ukraine are not enrolled in national educational system in their host countries, putting them at risk of further isolation from peers. Nearly 40% of school-age children now study only online or through a mix of remote and in-person learning, with an average learning loss of 2 years in reading and 1 year in math. How many human rights have so far been neglected? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Mr. Joseph Beppe Feneshadami of Malta.
Mr. Chair, may I congratulate the rapporteurs for their presentations being debated in the Parliamentary Assembly this afternoon. As a member of the Malta delegation representative of Partit Naționalista, the main opposition party in Malta, may I reaffirm my party's steadfast commitment to the principle of peace, international law and human dignity, principles which are under grave threat due to the ongoing war of aggression launched by the Russian Federation against the Ukraine. Malta, as a small island nation with a proud tradition of neutrality and diplomacy, stands unequivocally in support of Ukraine's sovereignty, independence and territorial integrity. The atrocities being committed, including the targeting of civilians, the forced deportation of children, and the systematic use of torture, represent violations not only of Ukrainian rights, but of the core tenets of the international rule-based order. Partit Naționalista, my party, has been unwavering in its condemnation of Russia's illegal and justified war. We have consistently called for the accountability and justice through international mechanisms, including the establishment of a tribunal for the crime of aggression, the strengthening of the International Criminal Court's remit, and the enforcement of sanctions where appropriate. We believe that peace must not be built on compromise with impunity, but on justice and the unwavering application of international law. Malta's role takes on particular relevance during the presidency of the Council of Europe. Under this presidency, Malta has prioritized the protection of human rights, the rule of law, and democratic resilience. So here, this afternoon, on behalf of my party, I once again express support for all initiatives which strengthen accountability mechanisms and ensure that voices of victims, particularly children unlawfully taken from their homes, are not silenced. We support the register of damage for Ukraine and emphasize the critical need for reparations, the return of abducted civilians, and the prosecution of war crimes. Let this Assembly make it loud and clear. The illegal annexation of Ukrainian territory to that of Russia and the commission of crimes against humanity cannot and must not be legitimized. Mr. Chairman, the war in Ukraine is not merely a regional crisis, it is a moral and legal test for all of us, for each and every European state, for the Council of Europe. The Council of Europe must lead in ensuring that justice prevails, that victims are heard, and that peace is pursued with dignity, legality, and moral conviction. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Our next speaker is Madame Louise Morel of France.
Merci, Monsieur le Président, Madame la rapporteure, chers collègues. Je souhaite intervenir sur le débat relatif à la libération des prisonniers de guerre. Et je voudrais d'abord saluer le travail de Madame la rapporteure sur ce sujet. Les prisonniers de guerre ukrainiens vivent l'indicible. Exécutions sommaires, tortures généralisées, violences sexuelles, enfermés dans des cellules surpeuplées, sans hygiène, sans lumière, souvent privés de sommeil, exposés au froid, sans soins médicaux, avec une alimentation insuffisante. La Russie de Vladimir Poutine viole de manière flagrante le droit international humanitaire et fait de la torture une arme assumée. Parmi les 4757 prisonniers libérés à ce jour, tous témoignent de ces violences. Et pourtant, aujourd'hui encore, près de 70 000 personnes sont portées disparues ou en captivité. Face à cette réalité, notre organisation a un rôle à jouer spécifique parce qu'ici, à Strasbourg, cette Assemblée est le cœur vivant de la démocratie, du droit et plus que tout de la protection de la dignité humaine. C'est la raison pour laquelle nous devons d'abord encourager les négociations politiques pour accélérer la libération des prisonniers, mais nous avons également un aspect judiciaire à traiter afin que ceux qui se livrent à ces actes de torture et de barbarie soient condamnés. À cet égard, nous avons ici la structure juridique, plus de 75 ans d'expérience, la capacité à échanger avec l'immense majorité des États de ce continent et l'agilité pour agir dans des délais raisonnables. Cela est précieux. Aussi, si je salue la création d'un tribunal spécial pour juger l'agression de la Fédération de Russie en Ukraine, j'ai une question pour vous, Madame la rapporteure. Pensez-vous que sur ce sujet, nous puissions donner un mandat spécifique à ce tribunal spécial pour agir sur le sujet des prisonniers de guerre et, le cas échéant, quel rôle la Cour européenne des droits de l'homme pourrait-elle avoir pour pousser l'étude de ces différents cas? Nous devons ici nous saisir de ces sujets et en le disant également à l'évidence, car les Nations Unies et d'autres instances internationales peinent à répondre avec la fermeté et la rapidité que la situation exige et cette lenteur affaiblit la protection des valeurs que nous défendons. Je vous remercie.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Mr. Vladimir Vardanyan of Armenia.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ladies and gentlemen, being prisoners of war are not punishment. This is just a military measure to prevent further participation in hostilities, not to allow a person to come back to the battlefield. What we are facing now, unfortunately, we are equalizing the status of prisoner of war with the status of the criminal. We are equalizing the status of prisoners of war camp with the status of penitentiary institution. And unfortunately, prisoners of war became more and more the subjects for intimidation and torture. This is totally undermine the very logic of Geneva Conventions, undermine the very logic of international humanitarian law. where the only option to keep a person in captivity as a prisoner of war is not to allow him or her to take part in the further hostilities. And when we are speaking about prisoners of war, when we are speaking about exchange, we shouldn't forget that all the prisoners of war should be repatriated after the end of hostilities, because undue delay of repatriation of prisoners of war after end of hostilities is a crime under international law. But furthermore, which is even more important, Geneva Convention speaks very loudly about the categories of prisoners of war who should be repatriated even during the hostilities. These are those who are amputee, who are mentally sick, who have very serious mental and health issues. These categories should be released even during the hostilities. Ladies and gentlemen, we actually use this report as a reminder that international humanitarian law is still acting. And I would like to once again remind all autocratic leaders that international criminal law and the crimes against humanity, the war crimes, has no statutes of limitations. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Mr. Oleksiy Gonozhenko of Ukraine.
Thank you. It looks like we live with you in different worlds. In your world, children, first they learn the sounds of music, or other sounds. In our world, children learn the sound of drone, of missile, because they need to know this to survive. In your world, children learn the rules of mathematics and other important things. In our world, the rule of two walls to survive. In your world, geography of Russia is Moscow, St. Petersburg. In our world, Russian geography is Alenia, Savasleika, Chauda. It's Russian air bases where their bombers are based and from where they launch their drones to kill us. That's the reality. And now, it's a great resolution, thanks to authors. But I want to tell you, the history is being written in trenches, and we are busy here rewriting resolutions. That's the reality. And now you prepare for summer vacations after this session. And we prepare for summer funerals, because this is our reality. And in this situation, we don't need perfect texts. We need imperfect courage, but now. So my proposition is, let us move Council of Europe from Strasbourg to Kiev. It was very symbolic to organize Council of Europe here in Strasbourg after the Second World War. But now it is not only symbolic, but it will save thousands of lives if Council of Europe will be in Kiev, protecting Kiev better than any air defense. If you can't give us patriots, let's come to us. And you will know all these sounds, you will know all this geography, and in this case, believe me, our resolutions and our actions will be the perfect ones. You will exactly know what to do to stop the horror which continues for so many years in the middle of Europe. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Madame Gabrielle Catala of France.
Monsieur le Président, l'invasion de l'Ukraine par la Russie a entraîné des violations généralisées du droit international humanitaire et relatif aux droits humains. La CPI a délivré des mandats d'arrêt contre 6 responsables russes, dont Vladimir Poutine, pour crimes de guerre et contre l'humanité. Selon le Haut Commissariat aux droits de l'homme des Nations Unies, le nombre de victimes a même augmenté récemment en Ukraine, ces derniers mois, notamment près de la ligne de front. Nous appelons cette Assemblée à soutenir le peuple ukrainien, agressé, à soutenir les résistants russes et ukrainiens opposés à cette guerre, à soutenir l'initiative de l'organisation sous l'égide de l'OSCE et de l'ONU d'une conférence internationale pour la paix, afin de s'entendre sur les conditions du règlement du conflit en associant impérativement l'Ukraine. Nous appelons à soutenir le déploiement de casques bleus des Nations Unies pour protéger les centrales nucléaires ukrainiennes. Nous appelons cette Assemblée à refuser une paix négociée sans les Ukrainiens ni les Européens et le pillage des ressources naturelles ukrainiennes organisé par Donald Trump. Merci.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Monsieur Claude Carignan of Canada.
Merci, chers collègues. Je tiens à remercier le rapporteur Krauss pour son travail exceptionnel. Le Canada applaudit les diverses mesures prises par le Conseil de l'Europe dans le contexte de la guerre d'agression par la Russie. À l'appui de ces efforts, le Canada a lui aussi pris des mesures pour venir en aide à l'Ukraine. En février 2024, le Canada et l'Ukraine ont conclu le partenariat stratégique Canada-Ukraine pour la sécurité, qui établit les divers domaines dans lesquels ils comptent intensifier leur coopération. Dans le cadre de cet accord, le Canada soutient activement le travail du Bureau du procureur général de l'Ukraine et de la Cour pénale internationale afin que les allégations de crimes de guerre fassent l'objet d'enquêtes complètes menées par des mécanismes juridiques indépendants, efficaces et robustes. Selon l'accord, le Canada veillera à ce que les avoirs russes dans le pays restent gelés jusqu'à ce que la Russie ait indemnisé l'Ukraine pour la destruction et les dommages massifs causés par son invasion. Membre fondateur du registre des dommages pour l'Ukraine, le Canada appuie les efforts déployés pour créer une commission internationale indépendante chargée d'examiner les demandes d'indemnisation. Le rapport Krauss accorde une attention particulière à la déportation illégale de quelques 19 500 enfants ukrainiens à laquelle nous sommes très sensibles. Le gouvernement canadien et ukrainien coprésident la Coalition internationale pour le rapatriement des enfants ukrainiens qui coordonne les efforts conjoints afin de veiller à ce que les enfants soient réunis avec leurs familles en Ukraine. Le gouvernement canadien ne ménagera aucun effort afin que le monde continue à se soucier du sort de l'Ukraine et réaffirme son soutien indéfectible à l'Ukraine dans la défense de son intégrité territoriale et de son droit à l'existence, ainsi que de sa liberté, sa souveraineté et son indépendance.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Ms. Yevgenia Kravchuk of Ukraine.
Thank you, Chair. We've been talking a lot about the special tribunal, about justice, and I want to remind for which people we're doing this. For those millions of Ukrainians that are not sleeping every night because of the drones, for those who lost their loved ones, for those prisoners of war that were in captivity and returned, and 90% of them experienced tortures, electricity shock, sexual violence, all kinds of torture, waiting half of the wait they before they went to these prisons. And thousands of them are there, and some of them are just hostages because Russia would not let them go. And I mean the defenders of Azov and the members of Azov regiment. We need to free everyone. We need all the families to hug their loved ones. And also, I would like to remind about civilians, about thousands of civilians that are in the pitches in these basements of Russian Federation and occupied territories. Among them, there are journalists, there are human rights defenders, there are just ordinary people who did not want to say that it's Russian Federation. I would like to thank all of the rapporteurs, and I fully support all of the resolutions and the amendments that were accepted. And there can be no forgiveness to any of the crimes of Russian Federation. There will be no forgiveness, and there will be no negotiations on the expense of Ukrainian territorial sovereignty and integrity. And I thank the rapporteur for pointing this out. And we need to help Ukrainian people to feel importance of international law, international organizations. And I want to thank again everyone who made it possible to go this far to establish the special tribunal. And indeed, we will be experiencing the historical day tomorrow, but then we shall not stop and bring as many countries to this enlarged partial agreement as possible to see the tribunal operate, hopefully by the end of this year. Thank you.
Thank you. I now call Monsieur Pierre Alain Frieders of Switzerland.
Merci, Monsieur le Vice-président. En premier lieu, je tiens à exprimer mon soutien aux deux rapports et je vais m'exprimer sur le rapport qui porte sur la libération des prisonniers de guerre. Je le soutiens sans réserve. Le sort des prisonniers de guerre n'est jamais une question facile, mais dans le cas présent des prisonniers de guerre ukrainiens, On peut parler d'une horreur absolue, avec torture et irrespect des règles et normes internationales minimales fixées par les conventions de Genève. Une amélioration de leurs conditions de détention et idéalement leur libération au plus vite représente une priorité absolue. Rappelons par ailleurs que les pourparlers sur la libération et l'échange de prisonniers représentent souvent le premier contact sur le long chemin pouvant aboutir à un processus de paix, en tous les cas vers un cessez-le-feu. J'aurais cependant quelques remarques sur le fond. Cette résolution, dans son paragraphe 12, s'adresse aux autorités de la Fédération de Russie avec une longue liste de justes revendications visant à améliorer le sort triste, pénible, insupportable des prisonniers ukrainiens. Même si je comprends humainement parfaitement la volonté de nos collègues ukrainiens de porter le thème de la guerre en Ukraine avec une attitude militante, de mon point de vue, le fait que l'auteur d'un rapport sur l'Ukraine soit ukrainien affaiblit la portée de ce rapport. C'est un sujet que j'ai déjà abordé lors du débat libre en avril dernier. Je vous rappelle le principe de l'absence de conflit d'intérêts qui veut notamment que l'on ne porte pas un dossier qui concerne son propre pays. Vu que l'Assemblée s'adresse aux autorités de Russie, un texte signé par, évidemment, logiquement, un ennemi déclaré de la Russie altère la portée des revendications. Au contraire, porté par un parlementaire d'un autre pays, il gagnerait en puissance et éventuellement en efficacité. Dans le même ordre d'idées, je juge maladroit l'ajout des paragraphes 17 et 18 à la fin de la résolution. On demande dans la résolution aux autorités russes de faire preuve de plus d'humanité à l'égard des prisonniers ukrainiens et d'améliorer leur sort. Et juste après, on rappelle les menaces contre les autorités russes de devoir répondre de leurs actes devant une cour pénale. Cet ajout n'apporte rien, la position de l'Assemblée est connue sur le sujet, elle est claire, je la soutiens, mais surtout ce rappel affaiblit la portée du rapport et réduit d'autant les chances d'être entendu. Et le but prioritaire du rapport vise justement à soulager le sort des prisonniers ukrainiens.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Ms. Nadezhda Iordanovna of Bulgaria.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Dear colleagues, as a member of this Assembly, I firmly support the two draft resolutions before us on the legal and human rights aspects of the Russian Federation's aggression against Ukraine and political negotiations to secure the release of Ukrainian prisoners of war. I'd like to congratulate all our rapporteurs for their excellent work. These issues are deeply interconnected. Over a year ago, journalist Victoria Roshina was abducted in Russian-occupied Zaporizhia, tortured and murdered. Just months ago, her body returned without organs. I know that we're working on a separate report on the captured Ukrainian journalist, but her case is a chilling example of Russia's systematic use of terror, enforced disappearance, torture, abuse of prisoners of war, illegal deportation, and forcible transfer of tens of thousands of Ukrainian children. These are not isolated acts. Both draft resolutions rightly affirm that they amount to crimes against humanity and in some cases acts of genocide. I fully support the call to establish a special tribunal for the crime of aggression, as well as a claims commission to ensure reparations and contribute to Ukraine's recovery. Equally urgent is the need for political and diplomatic pressure to secure the immediate release and exchange of Ukrainian prisoners of war and civilian detainees, many held in inhuman conditions, tortured or executed. Ukrainian children must be returned home. Despite Ukraine's effort to pursue dialogue, including its proposal for a ceasefire, Russia continues to escalate. Just last week, missile strikes on Kiev killed 20 civilians in one night. Colleagues, this Assembly must not remain passive. We must act with legal clarity, political resolve, and humanitarian urgency. Justice for Ukraine is justice for all us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I now invite Mr. Morten Wold of Norway to address us.
Thank you, Mr. President. Dear colleagues,
Thank you, Mr. President. Dear colleagues, I applaud Mr. Cross for his timely report. With a significant shift in the American foreign policy, particularly regarding Ukraine and Russia, this report is of utmost importance. It reaffirms our unwavering support for Ukraine and condemns the illegal and unjustified war of aggression by the Russian Federation. International law is clear. The only one responsible for the war in Ukraine is Putin. We do not accept any other narrative, and we do not accept an unjust peace. An unjust peace is not a lasting peace. I am proud that our Assembly has been a driving force behind the Council of Europe's accountability agenda for Ukraine. Crimes cannot go unpunished. It is therefore great news that an agreement for the establishment of a special tribunal for the crime of aggression will be signed by President Zelensky and the Council of Europe this week. Norway's solidarity with Ukraine is strong. Our financial support for Ukraine for 2025 amounts to 85 billion Norwegian kroner. And just 2 days ago, the Norwegian Kongsberg Group signed an agreement with a large Ukrainian company for the development and production of air defense missiles for the NASAM system in Ukraine. The aim is to help Ukraine define its own future and rebuild a safe and free Ukraine. And I believe we can do it. I wear my Ukrainian pin with pride. I got it from an Ukrainian colleague. Thank you, and Slava Ukraine.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Mr. Mike Reeder of the United Kingdom.
19,500 children. That's the number of children that have been forcibly removed from their families during this war, forced to live in Russian institutions or adopted by Russian families. That's more than all of the primary school children in my constituency of Northampton South. And we know that reports say that it could be close to 35,000 children who have been abducted. As we debate today's reports on Russian aggression and on prisoners of war, we must confront that shocking reality that these children have been removed from their homes and their identities have often been concealed. The report today on covering the legal aspects of Russia's aggression rightly condemns this in its very first paragraph. And I join in the condemnation of this heinous act, and I support its recommendation for the adoption of the Commissioner's Human Rights Roadmap. Equally, the report on prisoners of war rightly calls for mutual release and repatriation. And it's my firm belief that the return of these children must be an essential part of any peace agreement. I want to recognise today, whilst I'm here, also the work of UK Friends of Ukraine and their report, Returning the Stolen Children of Ukraine, which includes excellent work by my colleague, the Honourable Joanna Baxter MP. It documents the scale of the abductions, and I urge all colleagues to read it as we try to understand what is happening. The UK government has acted through targeted sanctions and legal support, but more must be done. International pressure must intensify. This is not an issue that we can take sides on. It's an issue about protecting children and protecting the future of Ukraine. Every child must be found. Every child must come home. And the Council of Europe must stand united in that goal. Thank you.
Thank you indeed. Our next speaker is Monsieur Christophe Bricot of Monaco. No. I now call Ms. Lysia Vasilenko of Ukraine.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you to both our rapporteurs in today's joint debate for yet again banging the drum of awareness about the atrocious consequences of Russian aggression and calling the members of this Assembly and the governments of the Council of Europe to act. Both of the reports are accurate in conveying the horrific reality in which we, millions of Ukrainians, live in today. And we live in this reality not for 1 month or 1 year, but for months and months, which have now amounted to more than 3.5 years of total war. 3.5 years of never-ending air raids, 3.5 years of sleep-deprived nights spent in bomb shelters and basements, 3.5 years of destruction, torture, killings, of waiting, of deportations, filtration camps, breaches of humanitarian law, international law, and complete disregard for anything that is human. Just earlier today, Russian missiles struck a passenger train traveling from Odessa to Zaporizhia. Images of wounded children, women, men, they flood the internet today and the news websites. Right after another strike happened on Dnipro. Killed, wounded, again, the numbers are being counted. For us, it's very difficult to find the words. Lisa Jasko earlier today mentioned the word helpless. It's not a word strong enough to describe what we feel when we wake up from the explosions in the middle of the night and what Ukrainian mothers feel when they try to shelter their children. For us, it's a word not strong enough when our children with bare hands take apart the rubble of their own schools and their ex-homes, searching for the remains of their classmates trapped under the debris. For us in Ukraine, it's unfathomable. Why and how is it that Russian aggression remains unchallenged in action when so many public condemnations are made in so many different assemblies? How is it that Russia has only increased its capacity to strike on Ukraine with hundreds of drones with what was tens just earlier before? How is it that it took us so long to establish the International Tribunal on Russia's aggression? I really hope that these two reports that we are adopting today will be the keystone that is necessary for our governments and our parliaments to finally act. Thank you.
Thank you. I now call Mr. Sasja Magazinovic of Bosnia-Herzegovina.
Mr. Chairman, distinguished colleagues, it is not enough to speak out against Russia's aggression against Ukraine while remaining silent about the responsibility of those who commit war crimes and those who fail to act and by doing so enable them. Aggression is often repeated because earlier crimes went unpunished. 3 decades ago, Bosnia and Herzegovina was the victim of aggression while the world watched civilians being massacred. One such tragedy occurred in Tuzla on May 1995 when a shell launched by the Army Republika Srpska killed 71 people. The average age of the victims was just 21. The youngest was only 2 years old. I speak this at the request of the Tuzla City Council. The family of the victims are not asking for revenge. They are asking for justice. For this crime, General Novak Djukic was convicted, but he is not in a prison. He fled from the justice and lives freely in Serbia, which protects him. He is a convicted war criminal, but also a symbol of impunity, which encourage future crimes, possibly even those happening in Ukraine or Palestine. Even more concerning, Djukic is not the only one. For years, Serbia has provided shelters for both convicted and charged war criminals. This is why the Council of Europe must condemn this practice and demand that every war criminal be punished, not just in Bosnia and Herzegovina, but in Ukraine tomorrow. Without truth and justice, there cannot be peace, not in Ukraine, not in Palestine, not in my country, not anywhere in the world. Let us learn from the past. Let us hold accountable both war criminals and those who protected them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Sir Edward Lee of the United Kingdom.
Mr. President, I only have 2 minutes, and even if I had 2 hours, that would not be enough to articulate the appalling crimes that the Russian Federation has committed. Not just its original invasion, but every breach of what we call the Geneva Convention, the brutal treatment of prisoners, the kidnapping of children, the bombing of innocent civilians. But I'm perhaps going to make myself a bit unpopular in this assembly by not just condemning
Russia, which I do unequivocally, like everybody else who's spoken, but also by trying to be realistic. Let's get real. We could have prevented this invasion if we'd invited Ukraine to join NATO. We could have defeated Russia if we had been prepared to send our own troops in, which we were not. We could have probably have forced a very difficult peace on them if President Biden had at least allowed his weapons to be used against the Russians on their own soil. But we didn't do that because talk is cheap, and we wanted to prevent Ukraine being destroyed, but we didn't want to defeat Russia because we were scared of the consequences. So where do we go from there? Now, I see this report as critical of President Trump, and I'm not going to make myself very popular, but at least he's come into this situation quite late in the day, and he's trying to make peace. Not a satisfactory peace, I agree. And it's something that we all deeply regret. We don't want to reward aggression. But what are we actually prepared to do? I've got my colleagues sitting in front of us. Are we even prepared to sit in Kyiv and put our own selves at risk? Do we really want a never-ending war? Or should we try and get some peace, unsatisfactory as it is, but at least we'll stop this bombing and this killing? So let's get real, and let's put our mouth where our rhetoric is. If we really want to save Ukraine, let's fight for it.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Mr. Joseph O'Reilly of Ireland.
Thank you, President. This crucial debate arises from Resolution 2598 of 2025, dealing with the need to ensure accountability and avoid impunity for Russia on foot of its illegal and barbaric invasion of Ukraine. This resolution welcomes the commitment by the core group of participants involving over 40 countries in the Lviv statement of the 9th of May 2025, expressing political support for the draft legal text establishing the special tribunal for the crime of aggression against Ukraine within the framework of the Council of Europe. It is great that tomorrow this will be signed off on. We can be so proud of this. It is crucial in establishing accountability that it is right in itself, but will also act as a deterrent into the future. We need a just system of reparations offering redress for victims, the register of damage for Ukraine established under our auspices on foot of Resolution 2573 of 2024 is vital. I am proud that our actions are real rather than aspirational. The sickening story of Russian aggression against Ukraine is a horror story of attacks on residential areas, on infrastructure, and of systematic torture. Of the 74,000 missing, unaccounted for Ukrainians, up to 20,000 are children, barbarously abducted for Russification. They can never be let slip from our agenda. Russia has flagrantly breached the core principles of international law, notably jus cogens norms concerning territorial integrity. Their brutality is unspeakable, and it behoves all our countries. Their brutality to prisoners of war and their abductions flout the European Charter of Human Rights. Frozen Russian assets are a legitimate source of reparations.
Joseph, will you close now, please?
All the members of the Council of Europe must actively support this.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Mr. Sam Rushworth of the United Kingdom.
Thank you. We assemble today parliamentarians from across Europe in an institution founded in the aftermath of World War to defend democracy, the rule of law, and respect of human rights. After decades of progress and flourishing, the clouds of war have again descended on Europe, including the most egregious of crimes, and the world has been reordered beneath our feet. Just a year ago, it was unthinkable that we would see the USA adopt a neutral position on Russian aggression against a sovereign nation. So let us in this assembly be very clear. It is for the Ukrainian people to decide whether to cede territory as part of a peace agreement, and not for Trump or Putin. As long as the people of the Ukraine want to fight for their homeland and for their rights and freedoms, friendly European nations must stand with them. The crimes of the Russian Federation are too many to list in 2 minutes, but the horrors we've seen, from the torture of prisoners to rape to targeting of civilians and the forced displacement of millions and kidnapping children, are acts of genocide which are a stain on our collective consciousness and compel us to act. The call in this motion to establish a special tribunal dedicated to prosecuting crimes of aggression against Ukraine is the very least we can do. Such a tribunal would send an unequivocal message that those who wage illegal war and commit atrocities will face accountability. It will uphold the principles of international law and reinforce that no power stands above justice. Colleagues, where the former leaders of the free world have stood aside, let us step up and fulfill our mandate, be a voice for the voiceless, a shield for the vulnerable, and the guardians of justice. I commend this motion.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Ms. Larisa Biloza of Ukraine.
Mr. President, honorable colleagues, first I sincerely thank our rapporteurs, Eric Ross and Lisa Jesko, for your moral clarity, deep commitment to truth, political and personal courage. To you, Elizaveta, for your personal courage to become a mom during the war, for your personal courage to work on such an important topic of repatriating and release of prisoners of war. Eric, that only last 2 months he was twice in Ukraine, permanently working under permanent air alerts, being with us in the bomb shelters, not sleeping, and facing and witnessing very severe Russian attacks on our capital. Colleagues, our voices here now at this debate are voices of those who cannot speak today. Abducted children, civilians, buried under rubble, thousands silenced by bombs, and prisoners of war tortured for defending their own homeland. Eric Cross today updated us on the situation in Ukraine, and I will tell you what just now is happening. Russia bombed the train, Odessa-Zaporizhia, and there are dead and injured. You should see this photo inside the train that is covered with blood and rubble. In Dnipro today, 21 schools destroyed or just right now, or damaged. 10 kindergartens, 8 medical facilities. This happens daily. Ukrainians are not numbers. We are people praying to survive each night. We cannot do this alone, and the civilized world must act. A terrorist state, Russia mocks all Geneva conventions. Ukrainian Poles are executed and starved. The ICRC is denied access to them. Families have no answers. A week ago, a doctor showed a photo of a released prisoner body burned with glory to Russia, and the letter Z, a mark of terror on the body of prisoner, burned into a human being like property. So, let's remember, behind every number is a face, a family, a friend. This assembly must at least be their voice, not later, but now. Slava Ukraini.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Mr. Emanuelis Ingris of Lithuania.
Thank you, dear friends. Today we are on the eve of signing tomorrow by Mr. Zelensky and other leaders the special tribunal establishment. After we spent years and years trying to establish a register of damages, and the register of damages, who is now working in The Hague, is only on second stage. Can you imagine? We are only on second stage of register of damages. Means we have no compensation mechanism in the moment when Ukrainian authorities donated 105,000 compensations for the bombed people, killed families and their relatives, and we should support internally Ukrainian victims just now. We are late in everything about Ukraine. And the other events in the world will be delaying the process. Well, Ukraine will be never more on the first page. So Russia is waiting when Ukraine will be on the second page of newspapers, and then they will do their work against us in Ukraine. So how we are ready to give, I'm sorry to say in this chamber, 2%. I'm just asking southern countries, especially Spain, to prepare to answer in The Hague. Just will be a huge NATO meeting, and understand that Ukraine war is our war for dignity. We have Belarus now. Do we like to have Belarus in Ukraine? Just Belarusian underground revolutionary people who are with us together today, they're describing Belarus like a gulag. Do we have additional gulag instead of Ukraine, or we are ready not to give Russia to re-establish Joseph Stalin type regime in the territories where they are captive? So from our point of view, I'm congratulating, but from other point of view, I would like to say that we are late in every moment of our support for Ukraine. Slava Ukraini!
Thank you. I now invite Ms. Elena Kumenko of Ukraine to address us.
Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, dear rapporteurs, during the recent months, we've observed a meaningful increase in prisoners exchanges. Numerous Ukrainian servicemen returning from long-term captivity, including the severely wounded, and families receiving the remains of their loved ones. While it's indeed important developments, yet we cannot yet let relief overshadow reality. Ukrainian prisoners of war continue to endure systematic torture and humiliation. Over 90% of our returned prisoners report similar abuse and maltreatment. At the same time, Russia's leader has reaffirmed that ending the war is not their intention. Exchanges happen under the shadow of renewed violence. Yet prisoners of war are not Russia's only victims facing inhuman and degrading treatment. You all know that almost 20,000 Ukrainian children have been forcibly deported or transferred to Russia and Belarus. At the same time, more than 1,600,000 of Ukrainian children remain trapped in temporarily occupied territories of Ukraine. Under Vladimir Putin's direct orders, these children are systematically stripped of their identities, placed into forced adoptions, and subjected to intense indoctrination aimed at erasing their Ukrainian identity. Education has become a tool of war, with schools transformed into platforms for military training and propaganda. Just 3 weeks ago, we were receiving the delegation of the network on the situation of Ukrainian children, and the members of the delegation, our distinguished colleagues, they had an opportunity to speak to a boy who was released from, who was returned from deportation. He was taken to the camp and spent there 6 weeks. And after that, he was taken to the military academy and was retained there for 3 months. So they could experience and they could see the testimonies of this poor boy. There are war crimes and crimes against humanity. These are assaults on our very future. Any genuine negotiations towards peace must address these crimes clearly and uncompromisingly, demanding the immediate and unconditional return of all Ukrainian children, prisoners of war, and civilian captives. Thank you, dear colleagues.
Thank you indeed. Our next speaker is Mr. Dave Robertson of the United Kingdom.
Thank you, Mr. President. There is quite rightly a lot spoken about the Russian war of aggression against Ukraine in parliaments, assemblies and debating chambers right across the globe. Putin's aggression has shattered the post-war consensus, and his crimes have challenged the rules-based order that we here seek to defend. More than this, though, in 10 or 20 years' time, when Putin has lost, and he must lose, in Ukraine, but when the history of this century is written, I know that my nephews and my nieces will one day ask me a question. How I will answer that question gives me shivers, and it causes me lost sleep. Because in 20 years' time, how will I respond to the question, what did you do? So what can we do? From here in Strasbourg and in each of our member states, we can say loud and clear that Putin must not win, that Ukraine must win. We can and should support Ukraine with words, but we must go further than words. And many of the ways that we can go further than words are before us today in the reports that we are debating. Today we can agree to establish a special tribunal and updating laws in our member states to ensure that the perpetrators of crimes are held to account. We can make sure that evidence for those trials is collected and preserved. We can continue to tighten economic sanctions on Russia and close the loopholes that Putin is using to finance his war machine. We can repurpose frozen Russian state assets for reconstruction so that our European values can again win the peace this century, just as they did in the last. Let us be very clear today. There can be no backsliding. There can be no equivocation. Despite the efforts of the Kremlin, despite their mouthpieces in other nations, despite the voices of some politicians who are too weak to see right from wrong, let us send a message today that Europe stands against aggression, that our values stand up for human rights, and that we stand behind President Zelensky and Ukraine.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Ms. Sara Sofia Siren of Finland.
Thank you, Mr. President. Let me begin by thanking the rapporteurs. These reports are very important and powerful reminders that behind every statistic there is a human life. A child who is taken away from their parents, a civilian being tortured, a prisoner of war going missing and disappearing. The violations of human rights documented here are not isolated incidents. They are systemic. Disappearances, unlawful detentions, sexual violence, torture, targeting civilians, civilian infrastructure. These are not only horrors that Ukrainians face every day, they are crimes that violate international law and human rights. Therefore, we cannot look away, and we cannot get tired, we cannot forget. Justice for Ukraine is about standing up for justice and truth. It's about defending the values and the world order that safeguards us all. We need to support investigations, enforce international law. We need to protect the ones that are most vulnerable. Ukrainian civilians, children, prisoners of war. I would like to draw special attention, besides children that have been forcibly taken away from their parents, to women that are in captivity. They have suffered sexual violence and trauma. Many have been cut off from their families and loved ones. Their rights must be upheld, their voices heard. Human rights are not optional, they are the foundation of the work that we do here. Thank you.
Thank you. I now invite Ms. Margot Greenwood of Canada to address us.
Thank you, Mr. President. Honourable colleagues, there's no disputing the fact that children have been among the primary victims of Russia's illegal war of aggression against the Ukraine. Children have suffered wide-scale death and injury. Many have traumatically also witnessed significant harm to others, including family members and friends. Russia's war has forced millions of children from their homes, displacing them within the Ukraine and abroad. The conflict has led to increased risks of abuse in many ways, including the trafficking and sexual exploitation of displaced children. Worst of all, Russia has pursued a deliberate policy of child abduction, transferring tens of thousands of children from occupied Ukrainian territory to Russia and Russian-controlled territory in Belarus. As a result of the conflict, Ukrainian children have frequently been deprived of health care and education. Equally important is children's loss of cultural identity, especially when their development is interrupted at key times in their lives. These stolen children, along with others around the world, today and in generations to come, are our future leaders. An attack on them is an attack on the very existence of our nations. I am proud that Canada is actively supporting Ukraine in this trying context, including co-chairing the International Coalition for the Return of Ukrainian Children. Canada has been active through the 2024 Montreal Pledge, which consists of concrete steps to secure the return of deported children through the support of intermediary states. In conclusion, I would like to reiterate the recent statement of the Council of Europe's Commissioner Michael O'Flaherty on May 14, 2025. We must insist, if there is to be peace rooted in human rights, we must insist on the return of Ukrainian children taken to Russia. Hi.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Ms. Alicia Zabrana of Ukraine.
Thank you, Mr. President. First of all, I would like to start from thanking to our rapporteurs for raising such important and such sensitive topics, not only for Ukraine, but I think for all the Europe. Since the last time we gathered in this chamber, Ukraine has endured more cruel nights, more missile strikes on homes, schools, and hospitals. Even today, when we started our discussion about these reports, in Ukraine, in Dnipro city, this is a southern city, we also had an awful missiles attack. And now we know that more than 16 people were killed and more than 174 people were injured, at least. So now, when we are in the process of discussing these very important reports, we have killed people in Ukraine, we have killed children in Ukraine, and Russia will not stop. More names added to the list of the missing. The tortured, the unlawfully detained. It's no surprise that everything happening around the world today, the growing violence, the suffering of civilians, the attacks on democracy, shows that we should have acted sooner. We missed chances to stop the pain, to protect people, to change the direction things were heading. But even so, we are late. We are not too late. This moment still matters. It may feel dark now, but it's not the end. And we highly appreciate the decision for the establishment special international tribunal. And we kindly ask you also to be active in the question of confiscation Russian frozen assets, because the peace, the justice, the democracy values is the most important to save their lives, not only in Ukraine, but in the world. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Ms. Mia-Petra Kumpula-Natri of Finland.
Thank you, Chair, and dear colleagues. Every Ukrainian needs justice and deserves peace. And this is what this institution is about. We need to work until we get every child returned and reintegrated Ukrainian society. And I support both of these reports, and I very much underline the sentence that Eric Cross has in his report. This assembly believes that the future peace negotiations should address the situation and define the role of the conditions for return and reintegration of Ukrainian children. I'm very happy that this Parliamentary Assembly, the Network of Children and the Finnish delegation had a whole-day seminar conference in Helsinki to talk about the deportation of children. And I'm thankful for Erik that he has included in his report also more knowledge that we have learned even during that day. We also had a visitor from Yale University Research Lab who's analyzing with his team and setting the conditions to understand the whole strategy of Putin and then locate those children that are missing. Our group on the Ukrainian children works intensively on the issues, and we see that so many souls are missed in Russia, but also more than 1,200 returned. And we have to continue to reach those 20,000, which might be difficult, but we see also that in the temporary occupied territories, the situation is deteriorating. Together with the Belarus, Putin has plans to militarize those young souls of Ukrainian kids, to educate them to be part of the Russian army. So we have mentioned here before that we want to support the institutions to support this special tribunal and contribute the work of the Register of Damage for Ukraine and Compensation Fund. And we have to repeat it until they are true. We have had news on the Council that it's getting soon, but we have to pressure until it's very true and functioning.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Mr. Kasper Plzezinski of Poland. Not here. Then I call Ms. Manuela Petringella of the United Kingdom.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the rapporteurs for their important work. Russia's illegal invasion of Ukraine is an assault on the very foundations of international law, human rights, and on the principle that borders cannot and must not be redrawn by brute force. Those of us who believe in democracy and the rule of law have a duty to stand with Ukraine and support the Ukrainian resistance against Putin's barbarism. We have once again seen Russian attacks on homes and civilian infrastructure and the death of innocent people. The UK and other European countries have played a meaningful role. The public response to the plight of the Ukrainian people has been extraordinary. However, goodwill alone is not enough. This is the moment to step up, not slow down. If Washington is hesitating, then Europe must lead against the tyrants in our own continent. We must shut off the financial lifelines that are still propping up Putin's war machine. And frozen Russian assets must be seized and used to sustain the war effort and rebuild Ukraine. That money cannot sit idle while Russian bombs level hospitals, flatten homes, and turn schools into mass graves. Every hour frozen Russian assets lie untouched is an hour Ukraine pays the price for our hesitation. Sanctions are only as tough as the efforts we put into enforcing them and must cause real pressure on the Russian regime. And let us be absolutely clear, there can be no peace without justice. The forced deportation of civilians, the abduction of children, the mass targeting of civilians, these are war crimes. The special tribunal must quickly progress, hold accountable all those responsible and complicit in Russian aggression. But above all, it must be effective in delivering international justice. Colleagues, we must stay the course until Europe is free again. Thank you.
Thank you. I now invite Madam Alexandra Schuss of Luxembourg to address us.
Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, we gather today not only to exchange views, but to uphold the principles that define this very institution: the rule of law, human rights, and the dignity of all people, even in times of war. There is a growing and justified recognition that aggression constitutes one of the gravest crimes in international law. The momentum towards establishing special tribunals to prosecute such acts sends a clear message that the international community will not be silent in the face of unprovoked violence. In this pursuit of justice, we must remain vigilant. Legal determinations must not be shaped by shifting political winds. It is dangerously easy to label acts as aggression when it serves strategic interests, but justice demands objective criteria, principled reasoning, and consistent application. Above all, we must ensure that the law is applied to everyone. Selective justice corrodes legitimacy. It undermines the very values we seek to defend. Nowhere is this clarity more urgently needed than in the ongoing war in Ukraine. My party in Luxembourg is of the opinion that a negotiated settlement, one that protects Ukraine's sovereignty and reflects the principles of international law, is the only path to lasting peace. The Council of Europe has a vital role to play in this, not as a partisan actor, but as a defender of human rights, of national minorities, and of democratic values. At the same time, we must not forget the human cost of conflict, especially for prisoners of war. The Geneva Conventions are unambiguous. All combatants must be treated humanely, and civilians must never be arbitrarily detained. The recent exchange of prisoners between Ukraine and the Russian Federation are a welcome sign of what diplomacy can achieve. But much more is needed. Detaining civilians in violation of international norms is not only illegal, it is morally indefensible. Furthermore, we must consider the long-term human consequence of conflict. Former prisoners return home with deep psychological scars. They require medical care, social support, and reintegration programs. The reintegration is not a matter of charity, it's a long-term responsibility. If we are willing to invest billions in weapons and military support, let us also invest in the healing of those broken by conflict. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Monsieur François Bonneau of France. Have you put your badge in? You need to press the button as well.
Oui. Ah. Merci, pardon. Monsieur le Président, mes chers collègues, je salue tout d'abord le rapport de notre collègue Yelizaveta Yovsko qui met en lumière des crimes perpétrés par la Fédération de Russie contre les prisonniers de guerre ukrainiens. Ce rapport révèle des chiffres édifiants, sans doute largement sous-estimés, concernant les exécutions sommaires, les actes de torture, les privations de soins et les sévices sexuels infligés aux prisonniers de guerre par le régime de Vladimir Poutine. Ces faits sont largement documentés, notamment par la Commission d'enquête des Nations Unies pour l'Ukraine. Il est pourtant difficile d'en saisir toute l'ampleur, car la Fédération de Russie refuse aux représentants d'organisations internationales l'accès aux prisonniers de guerre. Le nombre exact de prisonniers de guerre et de civils ukrainiens détenus par la Russie reste lui aussi inconnu. Bien que 64 échanges de prisonniers aient eu lieu depuis le début du conflit, les geôles de Vladimir Poutine abriteraient encore plusieurs dizaines de milliers de prisonniers ukrainiens, militaires ou civils. Selon l'ONU, 95% de prisonniers libérés déclarent avoir été victimes de tortures et de mauvais traitements. Il s'agit donc bien d'un système organisé par le Kremlin et non pas de cas isolés. Cette situation représente une violation claire, une de plus, du droit international humanitaire, en particulier la 3e Convention de Genève, qui garantit un traitement humain des prisonniers de guerre. Il est donc de notre responsabilité de rendre publics les crimes de guerre commis par la Russie à l'encontre des prisonniers ukrainiens et de tout mettre en œuvre pour obtenir leur libération. En tenant ce débat aujourd'hui, il me semble que nous y contribuons tous. La libération des prisonniers de guerre doit être une condition sine qua non pour un cessez-le-feu et une paix durable. Cette exigence, souvent négligée dans les discussions, constitue pourtant une obligation morale. Je souhaite enfin exprimer toute ma solidarité envers les familles des prisonniers de guerre ukrainiens qui endurent des souffrances indicibles. Puissent aux échanges d'aujourd'hui raviver leur espoir. Je voterai donc pour cette résolution.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Mr. Dmytro Natuluka of Ukraine.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. I would like to start with a quote. There is an old rule: whenever a Russian soldier sets foot, that's ours. These are the words of Vladimir Putin said on the 20th of June 2025, 4 days ago, at an economic forum in St. Petersburg. Another quote, and I draw the attention of one of the rapporteurs, a highly esteemed Mr. Cross, as an Estonian citizen. Should Russia actually invade Estonia, the alliance clause in Article 5 applies. If it's a relatively small attack, and Estonia's overall territorial integrity is not threatened, there's time for consultations. We have to weigh up whether we want to start a war or not. These are the words of Robert Bauer, a NATO admiral, chair of the NATO Military Committee until January 2025. Now, my question to you is, what is a relatively small attack? Is an invasion of a border checkpoint a relatively small attack? Is an invasion on a village near the border a relatively small attack? How can you define that? But moreover, how can you be sure that if a Russian soldier sets foot on a relatively small part of your territory, that will not be considered theirs, as Vladimir Putin puts it? So my message, ladies and gentlemen, here is that this is not just about Ukraine. This is about any country where a Russian soldier might put their foot on. And unfortunately today, all of the countries that have borders with Russia are under threat. So we are here establishing a tribunal and taking care of the prisoners of war, not just of the Ukrainian side. We are waiting on not how to start a war, we should consider how to stop this war and to win it for good. So please support both resolutions. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Monsieur Stéphane Mazars of France.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Mes chers collègues, le 5 juin, dans la région de Tcherniz, les missiles russes ont tué 5 civils, dont un enfant. Le 10 juin, la Russie a délibérément ciblé une maternité dans la ville d'Odessa. Dans la nuit du 16 au 17 juin, à Kiev, une série de drones et missiles ont détruit des immeubles d'habitation, faisant 28 morts, tous des civils. Hier encore, et une nouvelle fois dans la capitale ukrainienne, les attaques ont fait de nouveaux morts civils, dont une enfant de 11 ans, elle s'appelait Maria. Ces exemples ne sont ceux que de ces derniers jours. Je pourrais continuer à énumérer les morts, les blessés, les visages disparus, mais mes chers collègues, cette liste macabre serait malheureusement trop longue et sans doute incomplète. Ce que nous voyons là, jour après jour, ce ne sont pas des tragédies isolées, c'est bien le fruit d'une stratégie d'ensemble et délibérée. Celle d'un État agresseur qui piétine le droit international, bombarde les habitations, cible les civils, tue les enfants, organise la déportation des plus jeunes, torture les prisonniers, nie jusqu'à l'existence même d'un peuple. Oui, la Fédération de Russie mène une guerre d'agression criminelle contre l'Ukraine, et face à cela, que faisons-nous? Ce rapport de notre collègue Cross, dont je salue la qualité, ne se contente pas de dénoncer les exactions commises, mais trace bien une voie. Il affirme d'abord que l'impunité ne peut être le prix de la paix, car la paix, si elle était fondée sur l'oubli, sur les concessions territorialement imposées, sur le silence des victimes, ne serait qu'un armistice toxique, une simple trêve qui annoncerait les agressions de demain. Et puis, mes chers collègues, nous devons enfin créer ce tribunal spécial si attendu, pour juger le crime d'agression contre l'Ukraine. Ce tribunal est techniquement prêt, les bases juridiques sont posées, il ne manque qu'une chose, notre action politique. En parallèle, nous devons garantir l'indemnisation effective des victimes. Le registre des dommages a été mis en place et plus de 20 000 demandes sont d'ores et déjà enregistrées. Enfin, je veux dire clairement qu'aucun accord de paix ne peut légitimer l'annexion des territoires ukrainiens. Chers collègues, nous sommes bien à la croisée des chemins. Ce que nous décidons aujourd'hui redéfinira l'avenir de notre ordre international et de notre continent fondé sur le droit et la justice.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Ms. Mira Nieminen of Finland.
Mr. President, dear colleagues, Russia has committed serious violation of international law in Ukraine. Among these crimes, the forced deportation of children stands out as particularly cruel. These are not isolated incidents. They are part of a broader systematic campaign to destroy Ukraine's identity, break national will, and inflict lasting harm on the civilian population. This assembly has been very clear. All illegally detained Ukrainian civilians must be released. Abducted children must be returned to their homes. This must happen now, not years from now. Our duty is to keep these children on the agenda. They must not be forgotten, not reduced to statistic and the bottom of the news report. Every child has a name, a family, and a future. We need closer cooperation between judicial authorities, stronger sanctions, and diplomatic isolation for those obstructing the return of abducted children. These crimes must not be unpunished. We must ensure criminal accountability for those involved in the forced deportation of children. We must insist on the immediate return of these children, and above all, we need reparations. State-level and individual compensation are essential. This will only be achieved with determined and unfettered international cooperation. The ICC and the European Court of Human Rights have acted, but Russia's refusal to cooperate makes justice difficult. We must increase the pressure. Finland's position is clear. All forcibly deported children must be returned. This is not a matter of negotiation, it is a legal obligation. Thank you.
Thank you. I now call Ms. Marina Badina of Ukraine.
Mr. President, dear colleagues, first of all, I would like to say thank you to the rapporteurs for their work in preparing reports on such important and complex matters. Today's morning starts for me with a message from our Parliament colleague, from my Parliament assistant, and she says she needs to go out of Kiev to her hometown Dnipro, because in the morning Russian missile hit the residential building her parents live in. A week ago, my former Parliament colleague lost her husband, and Ukraine lost talented actor Yuri Filipenko. He was only 32 years old, and Russia killed him. I can share with you numerous stories about our everyday life in Ukraine, but 2 minutes, unfortunately, is not enough. So using this time, I want to say one more time that the establishment of a special tribunal for the crime of aggression against Ukraine within the framework of the Council of Europe is an extremely important step towards ensuring accountability for Russia and its officials. Equally vital to restoring justice is the use of frozen Russian assets to compensate individuals whose rights have been violated as a result of the Russian Federation's armed aggression. Furthermore, I would also like to share with you information about our parliamentary work to support people, to support special category of victims who have suffered from conflict-related sexual violence. And in this year, in June, Ukraine's law on legal and social protection of persons who suffered from sexual violence related to the armed aggression of the Russian Federation against Ukraine and provision of urgent interim reparations entered into force. I want to thank all of you, especially my committee, Ms. Petra Bayer, for help, for support, and thanks to our joint efforts, Ukraine became the first country to adopt reparation legislation during an ongoing war. So today's resolution is an important step in this direction to support these people and other categories of victims, and I hope that finally the principle of justice will win. Thank you.
Thank you. And our final speaker is Ms. Kadri Tali of Estonia.
Honourable President, dear rapporteurs, ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I would like to say that there is not enough words to describe the importance of these reports. Most of us in this hall have been living in a democratic world. For many of us, democracy is so essential in everyday life that we might not even understand the concept of lack of it until it is too late. We Estonians have been there. Our country has been occupied, and we have learned it in a hard way. We have missing members in every Estonian family due to aggression of Soviet occupation. We have been forced to study rewritten history at schools. Freedom of our home is our core value. The greatest threat to democracy is war, Russia's ongoing aggression against Ukraine. Putin's aggressive goals remain unchanged. He wants all of Ukraine, but not only. Russia's aim in connection to this war is much broader, to push NATO out of Europe and create a buffer zone beyond its borders. The outcome of this war is existential to the whole of Europe. Everyone in this hall must understand, your border is on the Narva River. We Estonians live there on a daily basis. Estonia has pledged 0.25 of its GDP to Ukraine's military aid until 2027. But also, Estonia has increased our own defense spending over 5% from GDP starting from next year. Europe needs to move into higher gear. All the European countries must increase their own defense spending. If not us, then who? Ladies and gentlemen, while supporting Ukraine, we must raise the cost of aggression for Russia. In this context, one crucial step is confiscating immobilized Russian central bank assets, not only the interest of these assets, but assets themselves. Russia has inflicted over 500 billion in damages on Ukraine. International law is clear. Russia must be held accountable and provide full reparations. The Council of Europe's registration of damages for Ukraine is a key tool in this regard. The international community has both the justification and means to act. Last year, Estonia was the first country in Europe to set an example by adopting a law allowing confiscation of Russian assets. Currently, over 200 billion euros in Russian assets remain immobilized in the EU. We must now mobilize our political will to use them for Ukraine's benefit. Dear colleagues, I kindly ask you to support these resolutions. Thank you.
Thank you. Dear colleagues, I must now interrupt the list of speakers. The speeches of members on the speakers list who have been present during the debate but have not been able to speak, if there are any. Are there any? Or we have all?
No, we have all spoken.
So you have all have taken the floor, though no need to make this announcement. I will call now Elisabetta Jasko, rapporteur, to reply. You have 3 minutes.
Dear colleagues, I want to thank you, each and every of you who raised the numbers, the facts, and the people's life stories. It matters to us, it matters to many Ukrainians, to different categories in our society, women, men, children, young people, elderly, those who are the front line, those who are not. All of us, we go through very hell days in our lives. And I wish I wouldn't be repeating all of this to you. But I've heard the question raised by one of the colleagues here from Switzerland saying whether it's right that Ukrainian is actually raising a Ukrainian question and Ukrainian report. And I want to reply on that, because I would be dreaming not to be raising issues about Ukraine and that crimes that are happening against my country. But if all of us would have taken this position, I'm sure that most of us will not be alive anymore. Our soldiers will not be fighting, our people will not be standing up and protecting our country and our lives, our children. Russia is really not listening to anyone. We know that. I want to just give you an information about the third Geneva Convention that says that in the case of the prisoners of war, the country, the state should establish a transparent bureau of information of the prisoners of war. But you know what Russia did? They actually don't say that they established something, but they report that in the Ministry of Defense there is something like the Information Bureau, which is already against the regulations and the rules. and they never share this information transparently to you, ICRC, and as it should be done. There are so many things that need to be rethought and redone, and I want to say once again that every member state here and each of you really can facilitate certain discussions to start negotiations to release and bring more people back home, whether it's Ukrainian children, prisoners of war, or any other categories of people. Please, let's not lose this time, because next day there might be hundreds and thousands more. I want to thank the Secretariat for this work and everyone who was very supportive and helping on writing this report, because we need this report for justice. Thank you.
Thank you, Elisabetta. I call now Eric Cross, Rapporteur, to reply. Eric, you have 3 minutes.
Yep. Thank you. Did I lose 20 seconds? No. I want to start with thanking all the Ukrainians for the help, and actually they are doing the main job. I mean, we are thanking each other, but that's actually a minute thing that we are doing. Thanks to the Ukrainians, we are still here today and talking about it. So this was a quite depressing debate. We have been debating in similar manner for the last 3 years. We repeat, describe what's going on in Ukraine. It's horrific. And then at the same time, we are self-congratulatory. We say that we have now established or about to establish the tribunal, and we have done well. And then we also say that we need to act. That's roughly the summary of all the speeches that were great. So I do not want you to leave here depressed. I want you to leave here today feeling the urgency. And the first job, I suggest that you actually take time and read the report that we are, and then the resolution that we are hopefully going to adopt soon. There are several assignments in there for all of us. The fact that we are signing, that President Zelensky and the Council of Europe will sign the tribunal treaty tomorrow doesn't mean that the tribunal will start to work. All of our governments need to join the treaty. We need to find money. We need to sign the treaty with the Netherlands, the headquarters treaty. We need to find people, judges, prosecutors, investigators. That all needs to happen. That's acting. That's what we need to do. There are other elements of the international compensation mechanism for Ukraine that are not done yet. We have the claims registry. It's working. Claims are coming in. But we do not have the claims commission. For some reason, some our member states are procrastinating there. So that is a job. We need to talk to our governments. We need to push it through. It has taken us 3 years to come to the point when the tribunal is finally been signed on paper. A Ukrainian kid who was 14 3 years ago in Russian captivity is now 17, probably brainwashed, indoctrinated, Russified, and traumatized. Does it take another 3 years? Then he's going to be 21 when he maybe finally gets justice on paper. Do we have a process to actually, how do we return all those Ukrainian children? There is a lot of work to be done, so let's keep going. And Ukraine must win. Slava Ukraini.
Thank you, Eric. On behalf of the Committee on Legal Affairs and Human Rights, the Vice Chair, Pablo Hispan. Pablo.
Thank you, Chair. President. Colleagues, last May, the Committee on Legal Affairs and Human Rights unanimously adopted the draft resolution based on Mr. Eric Cross. Today, we present the draft for final adoption by this Assembly. This is the third report on the legal and human rights aspect of the Russian Federation aggression prepared by the Committee on Legal Affairs and Human Rights, following those prepared by Damien Cotier and our former member, Mr. Davor Ivo Stier. I would like to thank the rapporteur for his excellent and in-depth work. Eric carried out a fact-finding mission to Kiev and organized multilateral bilateral meetings and hearings. The resolution covers many different issues concerning accountability for the war of aggression against Ukraine and all the crimes committed by Russia. But I would like to mention above all the Special Tribunal for the Crime of Aggression. Our committee was the one which made the first proposal to establish this tribunal back in April 2022. More than 3 years later, we are very close to make this wish a reality with the Council of Europe, an international criminal tribunal created by the Council of Europe for the first time in history. We should be very proud of this achievement. Today, the Committee of Ministers authorized the Secretary General to sign the bilateral agreement with Ukraine to set up the tribunal. And tomorrow, President Zelensky will sign the agreement here in Strasbourg. The Assembly will continue to support this process and put pressure on our states and national parliaments so that they can complete all the necessary procedures and give the necessary resources and tools to the tribunal. And we hope to see more developments in the future concerning the compensation mechanism. A lasting peace cannot exist without justice and reparation to the victims of this criminal aggression. Thank you.
Thank you, Pablo. Mr. Buix, would you like to speak on behalf of the Committee on Political Affairs and Democracy? If so, you have 3 minutes.
Oui, Monsieur le Président. Merci de me donner la parole. Chers collègues, au nom de la Commission des questions politiques et de la démocratie, je remercie tout d'abord Madame Yelizaveta Jasko pour l'excellent travail qu'elle a accompli afin de terminer cet excellent rapport, ainsi que Monsieur Ryan Vogel pour son avis. Je tiens également à remercier les collègues qui viennent de prendre la parole pour tous les commentaires qu'ils ont apportés au débat. Comme nous l'avons entendu aujourd'hui, la situation des prisonniers de guerre ukrainiens est dramatique. Les conditions de détention effroyables imposées par les autorités russes aux prisonniers de guerre ukrainiens, telles qu'elles ont été rapportées par différents mécanismes de surveillance internationaux, doivent nous alerter toutes et tous. Ces violations flagrantes du droit humanitaire international sont une insulte à tous les principes que nous chérissons au sein de cette organisation. Nous avons l'obligation morale de faire tout ce qui est en notre pouvoir pour veiller à ce que les droits et la dignité des prisonniers de guerre ukrainiens soient pleinement respectés et défendus, et pour faciliter et accélérer leur retour en Ukraine et auprès de leurs proches. En particulier, nous devons accroître la pression politique et diplomatique sur la Fédération de Russie afin qu'elle respecte pleinement la 3e Convention de Genève et qu'elle s'engage de bonne foi dans la libération et le rapatriement de tous les prisonniers de guerre ukrainiens. Il faut également saluer les efforts de certains pays impliqués dans la facilitation des échanges de prisonniers de guerre entre l'Ukraine et la Fédération de Russie et les considérer comme un exemple des possibilités offertes par la diplomatie, que ces exemples soient une source d'inspiration pour nos démarches futures. En effet, le rapport appelle tous les États à prendre différentes initiatives, notamment à soutenir les négociations politiques, à veiller à ce que les ressources supplémentaires soient mises à la disposition du bureau de l'Agence centrale de recherche du Comité international de la Croix-Rouge afin de renforcer ses capacités, et à promouvoir la mise en place d'un mécanisme permettant l'identification, la recherche, la libération et le rapatriement rapide, sûr et régulier de tous les prisonniers de guerre. Nous ne devons pas non plus oublier la nécessité de fournir dans le même temps toute l'assistance nécessaire aux familles de prisonniers de guerre ukrainiens ainsi qu'aux prisonniers de guerre rentrés au pays qui sont confrontés à différents défis pour leur pleine réintégration dans la société ukrainienne. Permettez-moi d'insister sur l'urgence de prendre toutes ces mesures, comme l'indique le rapport. Je tiens à féliciter une nouvelle fois Madame Yelizaveta Jasko au nom de la Commission des questions politiques et de la démocratie pour son excellent travail. Je vous remercie de votre attention.
Thank you, Bertrand. The debate is closed. Before we proceed, I would like to inform you, you have already listened by me yesterday and today, that President Zelensky is going to be tomorrow to the Council of Europe. Approximately, he will arrive in our assembly at 8:30 at the evening, 8:30. So I call all of you, all colleagues, to be present. He will address the assembly and then he will receive questions. So, the Committee on Legal Affairs and Human Rights has presented a draft resolution. The document was under the number 16193, to which 38 amendments and 3 sub-amendments have been tabled. I understand that the second Vice Chairperson of the Committee wishes to propose to the Assembly that amendments 15, 33, 16, 1, 17, 19, 20, 21, 4, 22, 6, 7, 38, 9, 14, 23, 24, 37, 25, 12, 27, and 34 to the draft resolution, which were unanimously approved by the committee, be declared as definitely approved. Amendment 36 was also unanimously approved by the committee, but will need to be taken separately, because if it is agreed, Amendment 8 falls. Is that so, Mr. Pablo Hispan? Yes. If no objects, I will consider the amendments to be approved. Is there any objection? No. So the amendments, as I have announced, are approved. I understand that the second Vice Chairperson of the Committee wishes to propose to the Assembly that amendments 3, 29, 35, and 31 to the draft resolution, which were rejected by the Committee with a 2/3 majority, be declared as definitely rejected. Is that so, Mr. Hispan? Yes. Yes.
Yes.
You can have the floor.
Thank you. Merci, Monsieur le Président. J'interviens parce que ce sont des amendements que j'avais déposés et défendus en commission et qui ont en effet été rejetés à la majorité de 2/3. Toutefois, je suis prête à retirer les amendements que j'avais déposés et qui ont été rejetés par la commission, mais je souhaite faire une déclaration, si cela est possible, au sujet des retraits donc, des amendements qui ont été rejetés, le 29, le 31 et, me semblait-il, aussi le 30. Qui ont été rejetés par la Commission. Je souhaite faire une déclaration parce que ces amendements étaient importants de mon point de vue, car je me bats pour que les opposants politiques en Russie, qui sont pourchassés, emprisonnés, puissent être reconnus aussi comme faisant partie de la résistance. Et je pense que c'est très important que ces opposants politiques russes, qui sont aujourd'hui soit en exil, mais pour beaucoup d'entre eux sont emprisonnés et risquent leur vie, soient reconnus. Par ailleurs, je voulais aussi attirer l'attention de cette Assemblée sur la situation en Ukraine, où la loi martiale, et notamment dans son article 111.1, pose des problèmes que la Cour européenne des droits de l'homme a dénoncé, que l'ONU a dénoncé, et que cet article de la loi martiale pose problème pour les opposants politiques et les opposants syndicaux en Ukraine. Donc je retire mes amendements qui portaient sur ces thèmes-là, mais je tiens tout de même à attirer votre attention à tous sur le fait que les libertés fondamentales, en Russie d'abord, et sûrement d'abord en Russie, mais aussi sous la loi martiale, sont mises en cause. Merci.
Okay, thank you. So, the statement has been heard. If no objects, I will consider the amendments to be rejected. Any objections? No. So, amendments 3, 29, 35, and 31 to the draft resolution are therefore rejected and will not be called. Page 11. An amendment 18 has a sub-amendment from the Committee on Legal Affairs and Human Rights. I call Olena Komenko to support Amendment 18. Olena, you have 30 seconds.
Yes. This amendment notes that the Russian colonizers will complicate the occupation and peace as they are part of the Russian strategy to legalize the consequences of the aggression in the form of redrawing borders. And they are involved, Russian authorities, in numerous human rights violations as described in the introductory memorandum. Teachers are eradicating children's identity, cultural workers are destroying cultural and religious heritage, judges are facilitating politically motivated criminal prosecutions. Please support this amendment.
Thank you, Elena. I call now Eric Ross to support the sub-amendment.
Yes, thank you. I'm in general in favor of this amendment with the following sub-amendment to leave out the names of the federal programs and to use a phrase to relocate, encourage to relocate to occupied territories through federal programs, period. Thank you.
Does anyone wish to speak against the sub-amendment? What is the opinion of the mover of the main amendment, Ms. Komenko? You said that you agree with the rapporteur. Okay. The committee is obviously in favor. I shall now put the sub-amendment to the vote. The vote is open. The vote is closed. I call for the result to be displayed. The sub-amendment is agreed. Now we come to the main amendment 18 as amended. Does anyone wish to speak against the amendment as amended? No. What is the opinion of the committee on the amendment? The opinion of the committee?
The amendment was rejected.
I shall now put the amendment as amended to the vote. The vote is open. The vote is closed. I call for the result to be displayed. The amendment 18 is rejected. Amendment 28 has a sub-amendment from the Committee on Legal Affairs and Human Rights. I call Sofia Sirikou to support amendment, Sikiru, sorry, to support amendment 28. 30 seconds. Sophia.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. C'est un amendement qui vise à rappeler que les autorités russes répriment aussi leurs opposants internes et ont sanctionné à ce titre, ont été sanctionnés à ce titre par les arrêts de la CEDH, notamment le 14 septembre 2023, pour condamnation pour la torture subie par Azat Miftakov. Il souligne aussi cet amendement que l'agression contre l'Ukraine s'inscrit dans un contexte plus large de violation des droits humains. Et donc, je défends cet amendement en ce sens-là et dans son écriture actuelle, et je sais qu'il y a eu un sous-amendement adopté en commission, et je souhaiterais commenter ce sous-amendement. Je ne sais pas si c'est le moment de le faire ou si je reprends la parole après.
No.
Non. Je ne connais pas le format.
I call Mr. Cross to support the sub-amendment.
Thank you. I agree with the amendment in spirit, but I would like to replace the last phrase, instead of saying particular names with a general phrase, who challenged the war of aggression of Russian Federation against Ukraine. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone wish to speak against the sub-amendment? What is the opinion of the mover of the main amendment? Now it's the time.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Alors, ce sous-amendement, je peux comprendre qu'on ne cite pas le nom d'une personne en particulier, c'est l'argument qui m'a été présenté en commission. En revanche, je suis un peu embêtée qu'on retire le terme de résister pour les opposants au régime russe, les opposants russes au régime russe, parce qu'ils contribuent aussi, par leurs actes de résistance, par leur refus de la guerre, ils contribuent aussi à convaincre l'opinion russe de ne pas soutenir Vladimir Poutine. Et aujourd'hui, 50% des Russes, selon des dernières enquêtes, ne soutiennent pas l'invasion de l'Ukraine. Donc je crois que le rôle des résistants et le mot résistance doit figurer dans ce texte.
Thank you. The committee is obviously in favor. I shall now put the sub-amendment to the vote. The vote is open. The vote is closed. I call for the result to be displayed. The sub-amendment is agreed. Now we come to the main amendment, 28, as amended. Does anyone wish to speak against the amendment as amended? Against. What is the opinion of the committee on the amendment? Against. I shall now put the amendment as amended to the vote. The vote is open. Yes.
You can't do the steering of. The committee was in
You
favor.
cannot have the floor during the vote, Mr. Hispan. The vote is closed. The amendment is rejected.
Page 20.
Amendment 2 has a sub-amendment from the Committee on Legal Affairs and Human Rights. Point of order, yes, sir.
Oui. Pardon, mais je crois que le vote qui vient d'avoir lieu n'a pas été réalisé dans des conditions où l'Assemblée a été informée de manière pertinente, puisque l'avis de la Commission qui a été donné par erreur ne correspond pas à l'avis réel de la Commission qui était favorable à l'amendement précédent. Donc je pense que le résultat du vote aurait pu être différent. L'amendement a été rejeté. Il devrait être remis au vote avec un avis favorable de la Commission. Merci à vous.
I shouldn't permit one vote again, and I want to ask the Assembly if it is agreed to vote again, since the message transmitted by the committee was the wrong message. Is anyone to object to this? Okay, so we will vote again. I would like to listen clearly from the committee what is the position of the committee.
In favor.
Okay, the previous vote was cancelled. We vote again. The vote is open. The vote is closed. I call for the result to be displayed. And what a surprise, it was unanimously agreed. Amendment 2 has a sub-amendment from the Committee on Legal Affairs and Human Rights. I call Alexei Goncharenko to support Amendment 2. Alexei, 30 seconds.
Dear colleagues, this is an important amendment and I think we should support it all together, so I ask for your support. Thank you very much.
I call Eric Niels Cross to support the sub-amendment. 30 seconds.
Thank you. The sub-amendment says that the visits we are talking about into occupied territories should be in support of Russian war of aggression, should have legal consequences, which means that not every visit, but the visit that supports the war. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Does anyone wish to speak against the sub-amendment? Against?
No, no.
Because you spoke for the sub-amendment. So, what is the opinion of the mover? Alexei?
I support this oral sub-amendment of the rapporteur. Thank you.
Okay, the committee is obviously in favor. I put it now to the vote, the sub-amendment to the vote. Let the vote begin. The vote is closed. I call for the result to be displayed. The sub-amendment is agreed. Now we come to the main amendment 2 as amended. Does anyone wish to speak against the amendment as amended? What is the opinion of the committee on the amendment?
In favor.
In favor. I repeat. I shall now put the amendment as amended to the vote. The vote is open. The vote is closed. I call for the result to be displayed. Amendment 2 as amended is agreed. I will finish my presidency. I will never learn all this stuff. So, I understand, this is a word. There is an oral sub-amendment proposed to Amendment 32. I call Sofia Sikiru. Do I pronounce it, Sofia, right? Sikiru, Sikiru?
It's Sofia Sikiru.
Sikiru, so, okay. I call Sofia to support Amendment 32. You have 30 seconds.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Donc, c'est toujours un amendement qui vise à réaffirmer la solidarité de notre Assemblée avec les citoyens russes qui subissent la répression parce qu'ils ont dénoncé la guerre en Ukraine. Nous demandons aussi et surtout la libération de tous les prisonniers politiques emprisonnés en Fédération de Russie en raison de leur opposition à la guerre. Je me permets de citer les noms de Azat Miftakov, brillant mathématicien, du militant socialiste Boris Kakarlitsky, mais aussi de la jeune Daria Koziereva, et du résistant Ruslan Sediki et des artistes Berkovitch et Petrichuk. Tous ces gens-là sont emprisonnés. Je vous demande de les soutenir et de nous battre pour leur libération.
Thank you, Sophia. I have been informed by the committee of the following oral sub-amendment. In Amendment 32, insert at end, as well as prisoners of war, political prisoners and civilians captured by the Russian Federation in the occupied Ukrainian territories and in Russia. In my opinion, the oral sub-amendment is in order under our rules. However, do 10 or more members object to the oral sub-amendment? That is not the case. I call again Mr. Eric Niels Cross to support the sub-amendment on behalf of the committee.
Yes, thank you. The sub-amendment is self-evident, as the President just read it, and we support the amendment itself. Just add this phrase. Thank you.
Does anyone wish to speak against the sub-amendment? No? Okay. The opinion of the mover of the main amendment, Sophia? You support? Okay. The committee is obviously in favor of the sub-amendment. I shall now put the sub-amendment to the vote. The vote is open. The vote is closed. I call for the result to be displayed. The sub-amendment is agreed. Now we come to the main amendment 32 as sub-amended. Does anyone wish to speak against the amendment as sub-amended? No. What is the opinion of the committee? What is the opinion? In favor?
In favor.
Okay. I shall now put the amendment as sub-amended to the vote. The vote is open. The vote is closed. I call for the result to be displayed. Amendment 32 as sub-amended is agreed. I call now Olena Komenko to support Amendment 36. Olena.
Mr. President, Amendment 36 was approved, adopted by the committee.
It is necessary to move this amendment because another one will fall.
Okay, this is about figures of a number of deported children and forcibly transferred, and how many of them were returned. There were 1,366 children have been returned, and 19,546 children still in the Russian Federation or occupied territories.
Thank you. Does anyone wish to speak against the amendment? The committee is obviously in favor. I shall now put the amendment to the vote. The vote is open. The vote is closed. I call for the result to be displayed. Amendment 36 is agreed. I understand that Mr. Oleksiy Goncharenko would like to withdraw Amendment 10 in favor of an oral amendment of conciliation. Is that so, Oleksiy?
Absolutely, President.
Thank you. Amendment 10 is therefore withdrawn. I call now Mr. Goncharenko to move amendment. Which one?
To move his alternative amendment.
Your alternative amendment, Oleksiy.
Number?
So it is 10. We're talking about 10.
Amendment 10, it's about Ukrainian National Human Rights Institution. That's very important body, and we need to say that it should be consulted for the prevention of torture. So this is very important, and I ask your support for this amendment and Ukrainian National Human Rights Institution. Thank you.
So I should have earlier read the draft. No problem. I've been informed by the committee of an oral amendment as follows. In the draft resolution, paragraph 12.7, following ICRC, insert, and the National Human Rights Institution, NHRI. In my opinion, the oral amendment meets the criteria of Rule 34.7. Any opposition to the amendment being debated? Oleksiy has already talked about this. Is there any opposition? No. Eric, will you support this?
In favor.
Anyone who wishes to speak against? Yes, Ms. Sikiru. Yes, Sophia.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. C'est pas que je vais me prononcer contre, mais je trouve qu'il est étrange de prétendre imposer à la Fédération de Russie le contrôle.
Sophia, if you don't want to speak against,
Si,
you cannot have the
je parle
floor.
contre,
If you want to
mais en
speak in
disant,
general,
comment
you
voulez-vous
cannot have the floor.
imposer à la Fédération de Russie le contrôle des prisonniers de guerre par un institut qui relève de l'Ukraine? Déjà qu'on arrive à imposer
Sophia,
des organisations internationales.
Listen,
Donc je pense que
Sophia in ancient Greek means wisdom. Please, Sophia, show wisdom. If you don't want to speak against, then you cannot have the floor. But you said I don't want to speak against. Either you speak against it, you have the floor or not. So you speak against and you have the floor. Okay, you have your 30 seconds.
Je parle contre, Monsieur le Président. Donc je vais recommencer les raisons pour lesquelles je trouve que cet amendement n'est pas une bonne idée. Je pense que cet amendement ne correspond pas à la réalité. La Fédération de Russie n'acceptera jamais que une organisation ukrainienne vienne visiter des prisonniers ukrainiens en Russie, soyons réalistes. Donc déjà qu'on obtienne que des organisations internationales telles que la Croix-Rouge ou d'autres organisations onusiennes puissent intervenir, c'est un combat que nous devons mener. Mais là, ce n'est pas raisonnable, ça ne correspond pas à la réalité, c'est tout.
Thank you, Sophia. The committee is obviously in favor. I shall now put the oral amendment to the vote. The vote is open. The vote is closed. I call for the result to be displayed. The oral amendment is agreed. I call again Mr. Goncharenko to support Amendment 11. Oleksiy, 30 seconds.
Thank you very much. We're speaking again about National Human Rights Institution, and once again, it is very important institution, and this amendment proposes to insert the following paragraph: invites relevant international accountability mechanism to establish a standing council with the National Human Rights Institution. So this is very important. I ask to support. Thank you.
Anyone who wishes to speak against the amendment? What is the committee's view?
Favor.
In favor. I shall now put the amendment to the vote. The vote is open. The vote is closed. I call for the result to be displayed.
46.
Amendment 11 is agreed. I understand there is an oral sub-amendment proposed to Amendment 13. Mr. Goncharenko, will you support Amendment 13?
Definitely. Amendment 13 speaks about an important theme that to insert the following paragraph: calls on member and observer states to impose appropriate sanctions or legal consequences on individuals who have entered the temporarily occupied territories of Ukraine in violation of Ukrainian law and international norms. We already spoke about this today. This is part of sovereignty of Ukraine, and this is very important to defend it. Thank you.
Thank you. I've been informed by the committee of the following oral sub-amendment. In Amendment 13, replace "and international norms" with "to support the Russian war of aggression." In my opinion, the oral sub-amendment is in order under our rules. However, do 10 or more members object to the oral sub-amendment being debated? No. That is not the case. I call Mr. Cross to support the sub-amendment on behalf of the committee.
Thank you. Yes, we already voted for one similar sub-amendment. It's the same. We replace "and international norms" with "to support the Russian war of aggression," to make it clear what visits we're talking about. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Anyone wish to speak against the sub-amendment? Yes, Sophia.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Je tire la sonnette d'alarme sur ce type d'amendement parce que c'est un amendement qui, encore une fois, est de l'irréel politique. La réalité des frontières aujourd'hui y compris des territoires occupés illégalement par la Russie, avec la Russie. La réalité de ces territoires, c'est que les gens commercent d'un côté et de l'autre de la frontière, que les gens se visitent car il y a des liens familiaux, il y a des liens humains qui unissent les gens d'un côté et de l'autre de la frontière. En prenant ce type d'amendement, on met en danger des gens qui finalement circulent, parfois sans rien, et risquent, au prétexte de l'article 111.1 de la loi martiale, de tomber sous le coup de répression et de sanctions et d'être accusés de collaboration alors que ce n'est pas forcément le cas. Donc j'attire la sonnette d'alarme sur ce type d'amendement qui remet en cause les droits humains et les droits fondamentaux de civils.
What is the opinion of the mover of the main amendment, Alexei?
Support rapporteur. Thank you.
The committee is obviously in favor of the sub-amendment. I shall now put the sub-amendment to the vote. The vote is open. The vote is closed. I call for the result to be displayed. The sub-amendment is agreed. Now we come to the main amendment 13 as sub-amended. Does anyone wish to speak against the amendment as sub-amended? The committee agreed this amendment as sub-amended. I shall now put the amendment as sub-amended to the vote. The vote is open. The vote is closed. I call for the result to be displayed. Amendment 13 as sub-amended is agreed. I understand now that there is an oral sub-amendment proposed to Amendment 26. I call Olena Komenko to support Amendment 16. 30 seconds.
Dear colleagues, this amendment calls for targeted sanctions on individuals and entities involved in crimes against Ukrainian children and for harmonizing the sanctions policy among jurisdictions. Please support this amendment. Thank you.
I've been informed by the committee of the following oral sub-amendment. In Amendment 26, replace, including through the establishment of a mechanism for countering crimes against Ukrainian children, with including through the establishment of an international mechanism for countering crimes against Ukrainian children. In my opinion, the oral sub-amendment is in order under our rules. However, do 10 or more members object to the oral sub-amendment being debated? This is not the case. I call Mr. Cross to support the sub-amendment on behalf of the committee. Eric.
Thank you. It's a rather technical sub-amendment. We are using small letters instead of capital letters in the phrase, so that it would be clear that this mechanism doesn't exist as of yet, but it's a proposal to establish one. Thank you.
Anyone wish to speak against the sub-amendment? What is the opinion of the mover of the main amendment, Olena?
I support. Thank you.
The committee is obviously in favor, and I shall put the sub-amendment to the vote. The vote is open. The vote is closed. I call for the result to be displayed. The sub-amendment is agreed. Now we come to the main amendment 26 as sub-amended. Does anyone wish to speak against the amendment as sub-amended? The committee agreed this amendment as sub-amended. I shall now put the amendment as sub-amended to the vote. The vote is open. The vote is closed. I call for the result to be displayed. Amendment 26 as sub-amended is agreed. I understand that there is an oral sub-amendment proposed to Amendment 35. I call Olena Komenko to support Amendment 35.
This amendment emphasizes that the sanctions regime must remain in place until the Russian Federation fulfills its obligation to cease the international wrongful acts and to remedy their consequences.
Thank you, Elena. I've been informed by the committee of the following oral sub-amendment. In Amendment 35, remove brutal. In my opinion, the oral sub-amendment is in order under our rules. However, 210 or more members object to the oral sub-amendment being debated. That is not the case. I call Eric Cross to support the sub-amendment on behalf of the committee.
Yes, it's not quite technical, but it's a small sub-amendment. We want to remove the word brutal because we are against all violations of international law, not just brutal violations. Thank you.
Does anyone wish to speak against the sub-amendment? What is the opinion of the mover? Olena?
Violations by the Russian Federation are brutal by default, so we can omit this word in the amendment. I agree with the rapporteur. Thank you.
The committee is obviously in favor of the sub-amendment. I shall now put the sub-amendment to the vote. The vote is open. The rules are being followed, dear Pablo, don't worry. The vote is closed. I call for the result to be displayed. The sub-amendment is agreed. Now we come to the main amendment 35 as sub-amended. Does anyone wish to speak against the amendment as sub-amended? No. The committee agreed this amendment as sub-amended. I shall now put the amendment as sub-amended to the vote. The vote is open. The vote is closed. I call for the result. Yes, Amendment 35 as sub-amended is agreed. Dear colleagues, we shall now proceed to vote on the draft resolution as amended, contained in document 16193. A simple majority is required. The vote is open now. The vote is closed. I call for the result to be displayed. The draft resolution in document 16193 is adopted. The Committee on Political Affairs and Democracy has presented a draft resolution to which 30 amendments have been tabled. I understand that the chairperson of the committee wishes to propose to the Assembly that all amendments to the draft resolution except Amendment 10 be declared as definitely approved as they were unanimously approved by the committee. Amendment 15 and 11 were also unanimously approved by the committee, but this will need to be taken separately because if Amendment 15 is agreed, Amendment 11 falls. Is that so, Mr. Boix? Yes. Yes, I see that you said yes. If no one objects, I will consider all amendments except Amendment 10, 15, and 11 to be approved. Is there any objection? It is 10, 15, and 11. Any objections? No. All amendments to the draft resolution except amendments 10, 15, and 11 are therefore approved and will not be called. I understand that the chairperson of the committee wishes to propose to the Assembly that Amendment 10 to the draft resolution, which was rejected by the committee with a two-thirds majority, be declared as definitely rejected. Is that so, Mr. Boix?
C'est ça, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Bertrand. If no one objects, I will consider the amendment to be rejected. Is there any objection? Sophia, you have the floor.
Je m'y oppose, Monsieur le Président. C'est un amendement que j'ai déposé et que j'aimerais défendre, parce que c'est un amendement qui est très important, qui vise notamment à intégrer l'idée d'un échange de prisonniers politiques, comme cela a été le cas le 1er août 2024 et qui avait permis la libération de plusieurs milliers de prisonniers politiques russes. Aujourd'hui, pour beaucoup de politique russe, c'est le seul espoir qu'ils ont de retrouver la liberté et certains sont en danger de mort, je vous assure, dans des colonies. Et donc je pense que c'est très important que notre Conseil, notre Assemblée intègre cet amendement pour leur donner l'espoir au moins de pouvoir être échangés et d'être libérés.
Okay, according to the rules, we need 10 members to stand up, so to object, meaning 9 more to support what Sofia has just said. You have to stand up, Sofia, first of all, you. Yeah, you and those who object. Pierre Alain, as I see, 3, we need 10, you need 10. 4, 5, Fasuli to Fasuli, it's a Greek proverb, 6, 7, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8, we need 10. So we don't have 10, thus Amendment 10 to the draft resolution is therefore rejected and will not be called. You are very close, I have to say. I call Olena Komenko to support Amendment 15. 30 seconds, Olena.
Dear Mr. President, the paragraph speaks of itself. We have updated it. Thank you.
Does anyone wish to speak against the amendment? What is the opinion of the committee on the amendment?
L'amendement, Monsieur le Président, a été voté à l'unanimité.
Okay, I shall now put the amendment to the vote. The vote is open. The vote is closed. I call for the result to be displayed. Amendment 15 is agreed. As Amendment 15 has been agreed, Amendment 11 falls.
Page 96.
We will now proceed to the vote on the draft resolution as amended, contained in document 16197. A simple majority is required. The vote is open. The vote is closed. I call for the result to be displayed. Unanimously. So the draft resolution is unanimously adopted. Finished. Dear colleagues, the Assembly will hold its next public sitting tomorrow at 10 a.m. with the agenda approved on Monday and earlier today. The sitting is adjourned.